Standing awkwardly against the wall, I pulled out my smartwatch and memorized the few notes I had bothered to take during class. Knowing my luck, the odds that I would run into someone from the main cast while standing here was 100%, but that didn't stop me from at least trying to prevent it. After a couple of minutes, I felt a gaze on me, causing my thoughts to fly into chaos immediately. Was it Liam? Lily? Irene? Alia? Undoubtedly, those four would be the worst people who could show up right in front of me, as I had bad relationships with all of them. Slowly tilting my head upwards, I let out a sigh of relief as a boy of similar height to me, with black curly hair and amber eyes, entered my vision. Although he was looking at me from the opposite side of the hall, his positive aura still managed to spread all the way to me. Since I had never met Zach before, even as the original Ren, I would just have to act according to the rumors. What were the rumors circulating about me again? They changed every week, so I couldn't be bothered to check on them. Seriously though, I swear some students would proactively follow me and check if I left the academy so that they create more rumors and gain popularity. I basically had a fan club. If I had to guess, this week's rumors probably related to me harassing or blackmailing Ruby due to the scene we caused earlier. As Zach approached me, I already knew what the conversation was going to be about. Would this positive guy really let it go if I were blackmailing Ruby? Unlike the others though, he wouldn't have any qualms with me being in the top 10 building. Well, I haven't messed around with Raven in a while, so maybe I could have some fun with this guy. I needed to pass some time while waiting for Ruby as well. Also, her eerily calm voice still echoed in my head, so I needed a distraction. Putting one of my shoes against the wall, I put on a smirk on my face as I stared at my smartwatch to make myself seem arrogant and cocky. Approaching me with a genuine and concerned expression, Zach waited in front of me for a moment before asking. Ren, I don't think we've talked before. I'm Kevin, nice to meet Dash. Interrupting his introduction, I asked while staring at some random app on my smartwatch. What do you want? Surprised by my outburst, Zach stepped back and continued. I was just curious about some rumors circulating AR Dash. Get on with it, will you? Your very presence pissing me off. I apologize if my presence offends you. I just wanted to as Dash. Wasn't I the one in his dorm building? Why is he just standing there and taking my insults and even apologizing? Internally laughing at his flustered face, I interrupted him once again. Did you not hear me the first time? What do you want? It was like a loop. He tried to explain what he wanted, but I interrupted him, asking what he wanted before he could finish explaining. There were some damaging rumors spread around of Dash. Oh my lord, where did you learn how to speak? Stop with the bullshit and just tell me what you want. How long can this loop last? Would I be unable to suppress my laughter anymore and break into laughter, or would Ruby come first? If you're wondering why I didn't mention the possibility of him actually explaining to me what he wanted, that would be genuinely impossible with me around. There was also the slight possibility that he broke, but for that, I would need at least 30 minutes. A crack appeared in his kind expression as he bit his lip, but he still persisted. Some terrible rumors have been spreading around about you, and I was wondering if Dash, are you illiterate? Spit it out instead of just saying, there have been rumors. Genuinely, I get and understand that you had a terrible education as a commoner, but this is a new low. Alright, listen, Sumpy Dash. Listen? What the hell do you think I've been doing for the past minute? Seeing his smile slowly starting to break, I wanted to continue, but before I could say anything else, a voice called out from behind both of us. Oh, hey Zach, what's up with you? My expression darkened as Liam came into sight. Seriously, I get there's a 100% chance of me meeting someone while waiting for Ruby, but 200%? That has to be a new low. Like really, where does it end? Is Lily going to show up next? No, she, Irene, and Alia are going to come barreling through the door within the next 10 minutes. Noticing someone standing next to Zach, Liam glanced at me for a second, darkening his expression, before turning back to Zach and asking, "Is he bothering you, Zach?" Letting out a chuckle at Liam's words, I ignored the stares of the two and continued pretending to look at the weather app on my smartwatch. No, it's nothing serious. I just had a question about the rumors circulating around. At this point, can you even blame me? This guy has mentioned the rumors about 100 times without actually explaining them once. After thinking for a second, Liam responded. Oh, the ones about him and Ruby? Please do it for the sake of the future main party members. It took him 1 try rather than over 10. Finally acknowledging my presence, Liam turned to me and said, You know, I'm quite curious about those as well. Without any hesitation or knowledge about the rumors, I confidently responded. And what if they're true? Seriously, at this point, the words just flowed out of my mouth. Was I really a professional third-rate villain now? Responding to my clear provocation and ignoring Zach's reaction, Liam replied. First of all, how did you even get in here? Do I really need to call security tonight? Looking at the disgruntled Zach, Liam added. Zach, don't worry, we can help Scarlett tomorrow. We just have to let her know of Ren's past. Seeing Ruby in the distance with my enhanced eyesight, I strode right past Liam and Zach, letting out a chuckle and saying,
Hey everyone, welcome to Firescale Audiobooks. If you enjoy the audiobooks, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. If you'd like to support us further, consider becoming a Patreon member. As a member, you'll gain the ability to request the next part of a novel audiobook I've uploaded, depending on your Patreon tier.
Please do call security. Also, don't you have better things to do than obsess over my every action? Don't tell me you're one of my fans. As both of them looked at me with shock, Liam was the first to speak in an angry tone. What the hell? Are you delusional? You're the one who keeps do dash. Patting him on his trembling shoulder, probably from anger, as I passed him, I added. Are you stuttering? Don't worry, it's normal to be nervous in front of your idol. Unfortunately, I'm quite busy, so I can't give you a picture right now. As I walked towards Ruby, I could hear Zach desperately trying to calm down Liam. Liam, don't let him get on your nerves. If you do, he wins. Snapping back at Zach, Liam replied. You think I don't know that? He's just so goddamn annoying, I can't. As I walked up to Ruby with a grin on my face, she asked. And why exactly are you so happy? I think I get why you mess with me all the time. Took you long enough. Taking the lead, Ruby guided me through the lavish and extensive mansion as we saw countless priceless paintings and various sculptures put up for display. In my dorm building, they don't even have painted walls. As Ruby stopped in front of yet another painting, I paused and asked, What exactly is a plan? Was she trying to scout out the dorm building to see possible locations for an assassination or kidnapping? Still staring at the painting in front of us, Ruby ignored my question and once again responded with another one. What exactly makes this painting worth so much? For the first time, I glanced at the painting. Using my eyes, I could see and count every precise stroke of an artist's paintbrush, so looking at paintings usually gave me a headache. However, this one didn't. It wasn't because its beauty was dazzling or anything. It was just that this painting had way fewer brushes than the rest of the other ones. Staring at the painting of an apple on a white canvas, I responded. Honestly, I have no idea. I could paint something like this in an hour. Where do I sign up to be an artist? Chuckling as she walked away, Ruby replied. It's because of the name. After following her for another minute, we finally reached the common area of the building, and Ruby sat down on one of the seats. As I sat down on the armchair across from her and leaned backwards, a sense of comfort immediately enveloped me. Ah, it's amazing. This was more comfortable than my bed. You know, that chair is worth over 100 gold coins. Immediately jerking back upwards, I responded. On second thought, it's all right. As Ruby sipped tea and stared out the window, I could feel some glares on my back from the other residents, but I simply ignored them. I was going to enjoy this chair for as long as possible. After ensuring that Ruby was back in her room, I finally left the extravagant dorm building and headed back to my poor one. For the next week, I continued training my mastery over elemental slashes and worked on mastering the second technique I had learned when I rose in dagger proficiency. Mana Feint. By imbuing mana into one of my daggers, as I attack, I can create a fake holographic version of my dagger to throw my opponent off. As I swing my dagger at my enemy, another fake dagger will be formed, swinging at the opponent from another direction. Of course, this holographic version of my dagger doesn't actually harm the opponent, but it confuses them, making them unable to dodge at times and giving me the split-second advantage I need to strike. In fact, even the AI training bots fell for it most of the time. They attempted to dodge both the real dagger and fake dagger strikes, putting them in a vulnerable position and allowing me to make an easy follow-up attack. Other times, the AI dummy's sword would just parry both the fake and real dagger strikes, once again displaying the weakness of the small daggers. As I continued to face harder and harder AI dummies, it was clear to me that I had to do something about the dagger's short reach. I couldn't always wait for the bot to come to me. If I wanted to take the offensive, I would first have to get close enough to the dummy so that my daggers would actually hit it. Of course, getting close to the dummy was difficult when it swung around its giant broadsword, causing me to step back to avoid the attack. Man, I really need a long-range weapon. On the other hand, I didn't have to worry about Ruby at all, as she just didn't show up to class. Well, it didn't really matter what she did. The odds of her being punished were 0 due to all her connections. Some rumors about me having something to do with her not showing up to class did spread, but besides a few glares, it didn't really impact my daily life. Professor Zia, especially, began glaring at me from time to time during class, but it was during free study time, so I just went on my smartwatch to ignore her. When I woke up on the day of the exams, I grabbed a pencil and paper before heading to the room I had been assigned by email. After the exam, I would have to get back into action as the second incident of the academy would take place through the academy's training camp. Opening the door, I saw a small room with a desk and a stack of papers on it. The walls and floors were painted dark gray to prevent students from getting distracted mid-test, and besides the chair, desk, and clock, the room was empty. To my right and left, I could see trembling students walking by and opening the door to their rooms, which mirrored mine. Looking at the crowd walking around, I identified Lily, Liam, Zach, and even Ruby. Well, I guess Ruby has to at least show up for the exam, or people will get suspicious of her passing grade. With a sigh, I stepped into the room, causing the door behind me to shut automatically, trapping me in the room for the next 5 hours. Is this a prison or a school? Sitting down in the chair, I immediately tried to touch the papers on the desk, but there seemed to be some invisible barrier preventing my hands from getting anywhere near them. Only the first page of the stack of papers was visible through the barrier. May good fortune be with you. Could they really not think of a better way to say good luck? Glancing upwards at the clock, I noticed that the exam would start in less than 10 seconds, so I grabbed my pencil and hovered my hands over the invisible barrier. The good thing about using my eyes for schoolwork is that I can solve any problem that involves a formula or concept I memorized within a mere 30 seconds. However, the bad thing is if there's a problem that requires more than just concept memorization, I'm screwed. That's how I ended up solving every multiple-choice question on the test but none of the free response questions. This won't look suspicious to the graders, right? Staring at the clock, I realized that I had about 2 hours left in my test-taking time, so I began pretending to work on free response questions. After seeing my test score of 100% on multiple choice and 0% on free response, I was certain that the teachers would check the camera footage of my room. If they saw me just sitting there doing nothing with 2 hours remaining, their suspicions would only grow. Flipping through the free response questions, I alternated between drawing random diagrams that were implanted in my memory to a random bullet point on a note page that I memorized a week ago. Right. How are Han and Jean doing? Though the test from last year was helpful to me for multiple choice, it didn't really help much as the free response questions were completely different. Still, after hearing about Han and Jin's predicament, I decided to get it. They already complained about their parents enough to me, and if their parents financially cut them off, their complaints would more than double. I didn't see them around much last week, so they might have been actually studying to pass. As the bell rang, signifying the end of exams, the invisible barrier once again appeared, immediately pushing my hands away from the paper. As the door automatically flung open, I could see various students walking out of the exam with expressions ranging from disgruntled to happy to even none. Seriously, some kids were just walking away with blank expressions, acting as if they had just witnessed the worst thing in the world. Is it not just an exam? Funnily enough, the students with the happy expressions weren't even excited about doing well on their exams, but the training camp. As a reward for students, The academy takes all the first years to Eldoria, the second most populated city in the entire realm of humanity. As for the named training camp, students are assigned random groups, and throughout the trip, these groups are surprised with random tasks they must complete. Besides the requirement that groups travel together and complete all the tasks assigned, the students are allowed to roam throughout the city and do whatever they want. However, if a group fails to complete one task out of the many assigned, they are immediately sent back to the academy, and they will lose 10% of their exam points. While the 10% loss in midterm grades is scary for the students, more are worried about not making it to the final day of the trip and being forced to return. On the final day of the trip, the academy personally rents one of the most expensive cruise ships in the world for the students. A ship meant over 10,000 people, given to around 500 students for a single day and night. Leaving the desolate exam room behind, I pondered what to do the following 2 days before we departed from the academy. Instead of traveling by portal gates, the academy rented luxury buses and drove us to Eldora. While this may seem unnecessary and very expensive, the academy still insists on doing this, as this is when you are first introduced to your groups. The academy believes that the day-long bus ride will allow you to bond with your groupmates and make plans for what to do in Eldoria City, making tasks easier and less awkward to complete. The interference with jinns wouldn't be until the cruise ship at the end, so I could rest easy for the rest of the trip, besides occasionally completing the tasks. As I stepped outside the exam building, Ruby, who seemed to be waiting for me outside, immediately rushed towards me. "What? Why so surprised?" "Oh, I'm just surprised you had the audacity to show up today." Someone who bribed their way through both the entrance exam and this midterm exam, still had the audacity to walk in like the rest of the students who worked their asses off? Of course, I was basically in the same boat as her, but she didn't have to know that. "Oh, come on, why would I waste my time in those classes? Usually, classes are the main reason people choose to come to this school. After all, this academy is so popular because it is known for producing important people within the magical world through its amazing classes and professors." Ignoring my remark, Ruby ran forward before turning around to face me with a smirk and saying, "Aren't you even the least bit excited about the vacation we have? You're planning on going?" Was she involved in the jinn interference? No. As far as I know, the Gemstone Order wouldn't participate in this. Of course, how could I miss out on vacation with everyone? Well, you missed out on class with everyone. Waiting for me to catch up to her, Ruby softly hit my leg before saying, "That's different. Don't act stupid." "How is it different?" Recalling my experience with Zach and my new reputation as a woman harasser, I replied. "Anyway, you've caused some trouble for me by skipping class." Breaking into laughter, Ruby responded, "Oh, those rumors? PFFT, I've been asked by like 10 girls if you're blackmailing me." Pausing for a moment, Ruby grinned before getting on her tippy toes and quietly whispering in my ear, "Don't worry, I'll make it up to you." As my mind exploded into confusion and various thoughts flooded through my head, I didn't let it show in my face. I responded with an indifferent expression. "And how exactly did you reply to those girls asking?" She had definitely been approached by Zach before, as that guy would much rather talk to the victim before the criminal. However, Zach still approached me after talking to her. That led me to the conclusion that Ruby wasn't actively denying the rumors. "Oh, how do you think I responded? Anyway, just what did you do to all of those students to make them hate you so much? At this point, the entire class has warned me to stay away from you." With a smile on my face, I responded, "What do you think I did?" If she wasn't going to answer my questions, why would I answer hers? Seeming to predict my answer, Ruby wore a sinister smirk as she said, "Am I to assume those rumors are all true then? Do you really go around harassing girls in the capital city after school? Is it true that you sneak around in the dark and prey on O'Dash? I know I've heard all the rumors before, but seriously, hearing them aloud just..." Interrupting her and feeling my excitement about the exams being over disappear, I said, "You can believe what you want. I'm going to go pack." "Hey Liam, how was your exam?" "Oh Lily, I think I did all right." "Tisk, just all right?" "I'm sure I got at least a 95%. Startled by Kevin's sudden interjection, Liam responded, "Well, Good for you, Kevin. You went in applause or something? At the start, Liam was very cautious when talking to Kevin, as he was scared of Kevin doing something bad to him through his father's connections. However, now, Liam had the backing of the academy's headmaster. Now that Kevin couldn't touch him, Liam didn't hold back when speaking to him. Seeing that yet another dispute was going to break out between Liam and Kevin, Zach interrupted from behind them. Anyway, Alya and Lily, how do you think you guys did? In unison, the two calmly and confidently responded. Perfect. Lily, combining her knowledge from the book and good study ethic, knew that she would probably get at least a 95, and Alya was also sure of the same. Letting out a chuckle at the two girls, Liam asked Lily and Alya, "Anyway, ready for the training camp? There are no cruise ships in the Elven realm, so I'm not sure." "Yeah, might be fun." With the Jinn interference and possible student deaths, Lily didn't have time to enjoy the vacation. After that fiasco with Alya's kidnapping, she had to make sure that everything was done right this time. What should she do? Inform the academy that Jinns may interfere. No. They won't take me seriously unless I have evidence. Interrupting Lily's train of thought, Kevin suddenly asked her in his most nonchalant voice, "Lily, you want to group up?" Before Lily could even respond, Liam replied from the side, "You know they're random, right, idiot?" "Oh, you think they're really random?" "Nothing in this world is random. Everything has a mastermind." Letting out another scoff, Liam responded, "Oh, are you saying that you're going to rig the selection? And what if I am? Do we have a problem?" "Oh, I'm just curious what the head and dash." Seeing yet another potential fight, Zach changed the topic. "Anyway, have you guys seen Irene around recently?" Ignoring Kevin fuming right in front of him, Liam though for a moment before replying. "Speaking of that, it has been a while since she hung out." Alya and Lily, who knew about the student council situation, glanced at each other for a moment before Alya spoke up. "I think she just needs some space for now." Zach was genuinely concerned, but he trusted the girls. "If you say so." Kevin, who didn't really care, turned his attention back to Lily. "Before Liam so rudely interrupted us, what did you think of grouping of?" "I have some things to do in Eldoria, so I'll be too busy to hang out a lot." While Lily didn't want to hurt Kevin by outright denying him, she also needed to ensure that she had enough time to make preparations for the cruise ship incident. However, Kevin was persistent. "Oh, you can show me around the local areas?" Before Lily could say something else, Liam's voice once again spoke out. "Oh, is that Irene?" Sure enough, exiting the exam building was a sullen-looking Irene with textbooks in her hands. As Zach glanced at Irene's departing figure, he was tempted to ask her, but Alya held him back. Liam, who also wanted to see what was up, was interrupted by a whisper in his ear. "Are you trying to cock-block me or something? Let me speak to Lily for more a second without you interrupting." Instantly, his attention was brought away from Irene and back to Kevin, who was fuming in front of him. Lily was too caught up in planning how to minimize or completely stop the Jinn intervention on the cruise ship to even notice Irene, and Alya believed that talking to Irene would only make the situation worse, as Alya had been chosen for the student council while she wasn't. Irene's emotions declined even more when she saw that her entire group was laughing and discussing without her even being there. The final nail in her coffin was that Kevin and Liam seemed to be arguing about Lily, completely forgetting about her existence. For the first time, Irene was worried about her exam performance as she walked to the training hall after the exams. Her lack of focus and constant stress had gotten to her, causing her studying to decrease massively and, in turn, her test results. At the front of the training hall, she saw the familiar figure of Ren, instantly lightening her mood. If she thought she had done terribly, then Ren, being a moron, probably would get a 0. In other words, Ren was the perfect punching bag for her. Irene was constantly surrounded by people who were as talented as she was or even more, so being around a weakling like Ren was just what she needed. Following Ren inside the training hall, Irene was thinking about how to insult him when the sound of the door closing snapped her out of her thoughts. When she looked up, she realized that Ren was no longer there. Instead, he was inside one of the AI dummy rooms. Holding her anger in, Irene realized that as a weakling, Ren should only have access to the AI dummies for 3 hours. "I can wait." "Yeah, I can." Heading to the training hall's target practice area, Irene fired fireballs even more powerful than usual until, finally, the sound of a door opening echoed throughout the empty hall. Since exams had just finished, no person besides Irene and Ren was crazy enough to train, so that had to be Ren. Dusting the ash off her clothes, Irene cockily walked over AI dummy area with her lines already prepared. However, as Irene glanced upwards, no lines came out of her astonished mouth. Beside the sweaty Ren was Scarlett, the new transfer student who ranked 7th in the first year and was comparable in beauty to her. Even that weakling had friends now, while she was left all one. Despite all the prejudice and terrible rumors surrounding him, Ren had a smirk on his face as he walked out of the training hall with Scarlett trailing behind him. Listening closely, Irene could even hear the two bantering about, while completely ignoring her presence. "Oh, if I don't? Are you going to harass me like the rumors say?" "Sorry, couldn't hear you. I was too focused on that spot on your shirt. You're bringing that up again? Oh, just wait, you'll see." Stepping in front of the exit to the training hall, Irene stared silently at the two, trying to adjust the insults she had come up with earlier. "Do you know her? Is she one of the girls you harassed, Ren?" "Really? After a while, the joke gets boring, you know. But didn't you tell me to believe what I wanted about the rumors? How do I know it's really a joke? So you decide to follow my directions now? What happened to earlier and the day before that and that?" Shifting his gaze from Scarlett to silent and stationary Irene, Ren asked, "Are you a statue or something?" Finally coming up with something, Irene arrogantly spoke. "Trying to get over failing the midterm by spending time with girls? Really, that might just be a new low for you." Looking at Ren for his reaction, she was surprised that a smirk was still plastered all over his face as he responded. "Oh, are you projecting? Where's your entourage? Oh wait, don't tell me." Little dash. "Yeah, I have plans later, unlike you, so I gotta go." Stepping past her, Ren and Ruby left the training hall, leaving Irene seething behind. Up into the night, the sound of fireballs hitting the poor targets could be heard, and the sound of yelling echoed throughout the empty room. "I swear to God you're... Why not me?" Having spent the last days practicing and preparing my skills for the upcoming cruise ship fight with both Lily and possibly the Jinns, I didn't have any time to pack. When I woke up on the day of the bus's departure, I stuffed the few pairs of clothes I had that were not torn in my luggage before taking a shower and changing into the academy uniform. Taking out my smartwatch, I contacted Raven to ensure that things would continue to run smoothly in my absence. "Raven, boss, if you have a vacation, can I?" "Ren, when we're rich, you can take a vacation every day, so just keep working through it, Raven. You got this." "Raven, you keep saying when. When the hell are you going to tell me when that when is? What if I die tomorrow, then what use will working bring me?" "Ren, don't worry, you won't die while I'm alive." "Raven? What does that mean?" "Ren, you got this, keep selling those scrolls." Putting down my smartwatch, I exited my dorm building and headed to the bridge that connected the academy to the capital. Nearing the bridge, I could see countless luxury buses and a crowd of students excitedly surrounding them while talking. Of course, some students were huddled up in the corner praying to the gods for good exam grades. Wait, isn't that Han and Jean? First Raven, now those two? Leaving them to the prayer group, I dropped my luggage off our class bus and checked in with my professor. Somewhat curious and nervous, I asked Professor Zia, "Can you tell who my group members are?" "You'll find out in a minute." "If I'll find out in a minute, why not just tell me now? Ruins the surprise." "Since when have you liked surprises? Aren't you the one who said in class that they're obnoxious? So, that's what you pay attention to in my class? We're getting off topic. About my group dash. Just go sit down." Nodding my head disappointedly, I walked back over to the crowd and started looking at my smartwatch. On the bus, there was no technology allowed as the school wanted groupmates to bond, so this would be the last time I could check anything for the entire day. After another couple of minutes, Professor Zia's voice spoke out, immediately silencing the talking students and catching the attention of the praying students. "As you enter the bus, you will be given a group number. The bus is sectioned off into areas for each group, so head to the area marked by your group number. Heading into the line of students waiting at the bus entrance, I suppressed the urge to use my stealth to sneak to the front of the line, using the shadows of the students and the bus. After what seemed like an entirety, I was once again met with the face of Professor Zia. Before she could say anything, I cautiously said, "Ahem, as you know, my reputation is not the best, so the group would be awkward if it's not people I know. So, with that in mind, what is my group? And whose fault is that? It's my fault that my every action is monitored by gossiping students? Are you saying that your actions described by the students are true as they observe you every day? Now you're just grasping at straws. Aren't teachers supposed to use logic? Your group number is 5. Head in and don't cause any trouble. You didn't say that last part to the student before me." Ignoring my last remark, Professor Zia pushed me into the bus, so I headed to the back where Section 5 was located. Since I was the first group member to arrive, I immediately found the most comfortable and spacious seat in the section and sat down. Reclining my chair, I almost fell back to sleep when an angry voice sounded from right above me. "Oh, don't tell me. What the hell is this?" Seeing the angry Irene standing in front of me, I replied, "You understand that this is a punishment for me, not you, right?" Before Irene could respond, another voice sounded from the entrance to the section. "Hello, is this the right section?" In walked Zach, accompanied by a digital camera that hung around his neck. The thing about my luck is that I couldn't tell when it was S or G. Was it good luck or bad luck that I was put in a group with Irene and Zach? Anyway, it didn't really matter to me as the main group during this trip of Lily, Kevin, Liam, and Alya was formed. Should we all introduce ourselves? Seeing the opportunity to entertain myself, I shot back at Zach. "What is this kindergarten? Grow up?" Ignoring Zach's crumbling figure, Irene replied, "Oh, you're one to talk? Didn't you attack someone else because they stole your crush? Aren't you just a spoiled child? Really bringing up Liam and Lily?" Even though she was talking about the original Ren, I still felt offended on his behalf, so I immediately began thinking of insults. Before I could reply, another voice entered the section. "Oh, that was a low blow." I slumped down on my seat without even turning my head towards the entrance, where Ruby stood with a grin. Did Professor Zia actually listen to me? I mean, technically, these were people I've met before, but honestly, I'd rather be with randoms. Ruby and Irene just don't seem like a good combo in any shape or form. While Zach sat down next to me, Ruby took the last remaining seat across from him. Without technology, all of us awkwardly stared out the window except Ruby, who was staring ahead with a smile. Did Ruby have something to do with this odd group? After a couple more minutes, the speakers of the bus announced, "The bus will now depart and arrive in approximately 8 hours. We recommend that you use this time to get to know your group members and make new friends." After that, the bus started moving, but it moved faster than I expected, so I was immediately jerked upwards from my seat and right towards Irene, who was across from me. Well, Irene didn't notice, as she was trying her best to avoid looking at me. She stared at the floor, the walls, the window, and even Ruby with a permanent disgusted expression. Seeing an opportunity to end this awkward silence, Zach immediately stepped up and said, "Seeing as we'll be together for the next few days, why don't we all introduce ourselves and give one fun fact? Is he a camp counselor?" Looking at the scenery of the sea that I had dived into not too long ago, I replied, "I'm good." Zach's exasperated expression only grew as Irene remained silent while staring out the window. However, his expression did a quick 180 when Ruby responded cheerfully, "Sure, we might as well," sending me a menacing glare that I could only see through the reflection of the window. Ruby said, "Right, Ren? Well, she is technically my boss, so I can't really say no to her. Anyway, looking out the window is giving me a headache. Seeing too much causes my brain to be overloaded with information, which in turn causes me to have a headache. Closing my eyes, I replied, "All right, let's have Irene go first because she's clearly in desperate need of friends. If I was going down, then Irene was going right down with me." Silently looking away from the window and back at me, a small flame began to generate on the palm of Irene's right hand. The flame was pure red, and its edges were as sharp as my daggers. Wait, Irene, calm down, he was joking. Letting out a scoff at Zach's panicked words, I looked straight back into Irene's fiery red eyes before saying, "Don't worry, Zach. I don't think her flames can even cause the fire alarm to go off." The size of fire extended beyond the palm of Irene, threateningly growing closer and closer to me while Irene replied, "You want to test it?" Interrupting our heated confrontation this time was not Zach but Ruby, as she cheerfully announced. "Well, since no one else wants to go first, I'll go. My name is Scarlet, but you can call me Ruby. For my fun fact, I enjoy playing knowledge-based games like chess." Reaching into her backpack, Ruby pulled out a set of cards before continuing. "I even brought a deck of cards if anyone wants to play cards." Enticed by the possibility of playing poker, I immediately raised my hand to shuffle the deck, which would give me control over what game we would play, but Ruby stopped me. "You'll have to introduce yourself to play. I'm Ren, and people say my hobby is harassing girls." Catching Ruby off guard by my interesting introduction, I swiftly grabbed the deck of cards from her hand and began shuffling, ignoring the starstruck gazes of the entire group. After hesitating for a couple of seconds, Zach also introduced himself. "You can call me Zach, and as you can see by the camera around my neck, I enjoy taking pictures. As an avid member of the Academy Photography Club, I have been assigned the task of documenting this trip, so I hope that you'll help me find some inters dash." Still shuffling the deck of cards, I interrupted Zach and turned to Irene. "Good for you, Zach. Mrs. No Friends, what about you?" Incited by insult, Irene immediately replied, "Mr. Harriser, you all already know my name, and my hobby is magic research. Mrs. Friendless, don't you think you should be good at magic research if it's your hobby?" The things she said about Lily and the original Ren were still fresh on my mind, so I wasn't going to pass up an opportunity to jab back at her. Of course, she is good, even maybe the best, for her age at magic research, but after not being selected for the student council, I doubt she feels that way. Also, it was fun to watch Zach's face grow more and more flustered at every exchange. This trip was going to be the most stressful few days of his life. "Mr. Creep, are you saying that you're good at harassing girls? Are saying that you agree with my sentiment that you are not good at magical research? I was merely pointing out a singular contradiction in your introduction. It does not apply to me." Before the flames could re-emerge from Irene's hands, Zach quickly interrupted while Ruby sat back and laughed. "About the C-card game, Ren?" Placing 2 cards in front of each of us, I replied, "Oh, let's play a game of poker." "Of course, gambling isn't gambling if we don't lose anything?" Perking up at my hint, Irene and Ruby asked in unison, "What exactly are you suggesting? Why don't we allow the winner to command the ultimate loser of the poker game around the entire trip?" As I was confident in my poker ability, I believed that I could win the game while simultaneously making Ruby the loser. If I didn't have to worry about Ruby going off and causing some variables, my plans on the cruise ship would be a lot more effective and planned out. Placing her hands on the 2 cards in front of her, Irene sighed before saying, "True to your name, you really are a creep, but I'll play along." "How does saying that make me a creep?" Flipping over her 2 cards, Ruby stared at them before also saying, "You know, I am really starting to believe those rumors." Just then, I felt a pat on my shoulder, so I turned around and saw Zach looking at me with a pitying gaze. "Don't worry, Ren, I trust you." I wasn't even mad at him for trying to sympathize with me. I was more confused about why he trusted me. I mean, I hadn't even denied the rumors spreading about me, so why did he believe me? Just, what the hell is going on in this guy's mind? Brushing Zach's hand off my shoulder, I glanced at my 2 cards, a 10 high and an ace, before putting 3 open-faced cards on the table. Instead of immediately looking at the open cards, I used my enhanced eyesight to examine each subtle reaction and movement of my group mates. Looking at Zach, I saw his jaw muscle twitch ever so slightly into a grimace, signifying his discomfort or dissatisfaction with his current cards. He would probably fold under a little bit of pressure. Glancing at Irene, I saw her rate of breathing increase, probably due to excitement. Her eyes kept glancing back and forth between her cards and the cards on the desk as if she were confirming her good cards. Turning my eyes towards Ruby, I was ready to examine her when suddenly, 2 soft and sweet words escaped from her mouth. "I fold. Next time." Ignoring Ruby's fold, I raised the bet, causing Zach to fold, and then placed the fourth card on the desk. The current state of someone wasn't the only thing I used when making bets in poker. Irene clearly suffered from a lack of confidence due to her rejection from the council, so even if she had good cards, she would begin to doubt herself as time passed. Raising the bet even more, I saw some self-doubt appear on Irene's expression as she tersely bit her lip before matching my bet. After placing the fifth card on the desk, I called out, maintaining my calm and composed poker face. All in. Instantly, Ruby and Zach's gazes shifted to Irene to await her choice, causing her to feel even more pressure and even less confident as all eyes were on her. Realizing that she had bet less than 10% of her money, Irene placed her cards at the bottom of the deck and replied, "I fold." The next hour progressed smoothly as we continued playing poker. Besides a couple of rounds where I folded early on due to both Irene and Kevin having good cards, I was almost always winning money. There was one problem, though. As I glanced at Ruby, who was holding her two cards between her fingers, she calmly replied, "I fold." This was the 7th time in a row that Ruby had folded. Not once in the past hour had she made it past the reveal of the 3 cards on the desk. What good was it winning if Ruby wasn't the one I got to command around? Both Irene and Zach were almost lower than Ruby in balance, so I had to stop winning. However, Ruby wasn't dumb and would notice if I suddenly started throwing the game. For the first time, I wished that my luck stat was actually G. After briefly calculating everyone's balance, Zach announced the results. In first place is Ren, who won by a whopping 500 silver coins. In second is me, third is Ruby, and finally, fourth is Irene. My luck had let me down once again. What's new? While Ruby winked at me, Irene sent me a death glare as she recalled the reward given to the winner of the poker game and said, "Don't even think about it." Ignoring her comment, I got up from my seat, left our group section, and headed to the bathroom on the bus. After walking a couple of steps away from the section, I immediately turned around and saw Ruby following me. What was that all about? And don't answer with another question. Shouldn't you be even a little happy? I mean, you get to command that girl around the entire trip. You want me to get down on both knees and thank you? I'm not forcing you to, but you know, if you had any semblance of gratitude, you should. Oh, shut it. Squeezing by me, Ruby walked a couple of steps before turning around and saying, "Oh, is it possible that you wanted to command me around? Now that I think about it, I mean, it would be interesting if our roles were swapped." Did she see right through me at the start? Realizing that hesitating while talking to her would bring more suspicion, I replied immediately, "Where does all this bullshit come from? You seem to have an endless amount of it stored in that head of yours." "Oh, come on, I was just joking around. Unless you maybe took it seriously?" Disregarding her comment, I turned around and headed back to the section. There was no way I was going to a bathroom on the bus, no matter how luxurious it was. You may say, "Ren, didn't you use the bathroom on a dangerous mountain range for 3 days straight?" But I've come a long way since then. As I entered the section, I saw Zach trying to sleep while Irene was staring out the window, paler than usual. For the next few hours, I laid my head on the windowsill with my eyes closed, trying to sleep. However, it seemed like people in the section beside us were really getting along, as constant screaming and laughing could be heard. If I had enhanced hearing instead of eyesight, I probably would have jumped out the window. Slightly opening my eyes, I saw Irene and Zach also trying to fall asleep, as well as Ruby, who was leaning back against her chair and enjoying a snack that had been given out earlier. Reclining my chair, I relaxed my body and began to fall asleep, ignoring our loud neighbors. "We have arrived. Please grab your belongings from the bus compartment and head into your rooms. Lights out will be in 30 minutes. Jerking upwards from the sudden announcements, I glanced outside the window and noticed that pitch-black darkness had completely replaced the sunlight. Following Zach and Ruby's lead, I got up from my seat, exited the bus, grabbed my smartwatch and backpack from the compartment, and headed into the hotel. The school did tell us that groups would have to be together at all times, so it was no surprise to me when the receptionist handed the 4 of us only one key. On the other hand, Irene seemed shocked and flabbergasted before once again telling me, "Don't even think about it." Not that I would, but how would you even know if I did? What's the point in saying that? What's the point of your life? To be a constant nuisance to me? Before our dispute could grow any louder, the exhausted Zach grabbed the room key and led us to our room. After opening the sliding door with our room key, I realized how similar the room was to a traditional Japanese room. There was a living room with nothing but a round table and some cushions, and there was also an empty room beside it that was separated by another sliding door. 2 futons were already placed on opposite sides of the table in the living room, and 2 more were placed closer together in the other room. Without any discussion, Irene walked into the room as if she owned it and immediately headed for the other room before settling down on one of the futons. Ruby seemed happy with this arrangement. She settled down on the futon beside Irene, and about 10 seconds later, Irene shut the sliding door. Left with Zach alone in the living room, I chose a futon and laid down while checking my smartwatch for updates. Standing alone at the entrance, Zach blinked for a couple of seconds before kindly asking, "I'm going to turn off the lights if you're all right with that. Do what you want." As the room became shrouded in pitch black, of course not for my eyes, I saw Zach struggling to find his way to the futon before putting down my smartwatch and trying to sleep. Just how was our group going to fare tomorrow? The whole point of this training camp was to encourage teamwork, as heroes are often required to cooperate with others to complete missions, but our team had no semblance of that. Of course, I am partially at fault for the lack of teamwork, but what would pointing figures and playing the blame game solve? Snapping me out of my thoughts, I heard a slight movement from the other side of the table, so I shifted my head slightly to get a full picture. Peering through the pitch-black darkness, I saw Zach slowly getting out of his futon and doing his very best to move through the room quietly. Sliding open the door, I saw Zach disappear into the darkness of the night as it was impossible for me to see through walls. Now, what exactly is he up to? Using my stealth skill as an assassin, I did the exact same thing as Zach, but 100 times better as I snuck out of the room. Utilizing my eyes once again, I looked around for a quick second before spotting Zach heading to the exit of the hotel building. Using the darkness of the night, I ran towards Zach's departing figure, making no sounds or indication of presence. Now, right behind Zach, I watched him carefully and cautiously open the exit door before sneaking out right behind him. Unless Zach was looking at my vicinity, there was no way he could notice, even though I was right next to him. However, that came with the restriction that I couldn't make any sudden moves, like pulling out my daggers or getting closer to him. Welcoming the cold air of the night, I used the shadow of the hotel building to sneak behind Zach while he walked around the building to its backside. Why would the epitome of an upstanding citizen be sneaking around and even breaking the school's curfew? Reaching his destination, I watched from a distance as Zach leaned against the back of the hotel building. Busy. As the sound of a ringing smartwatch echoed throughout the empty night, Zach pulled out his smartwatch and put it right to his ear. "I'm here." Yes, no one should know. Unable to hear the voice speaking to him on the phone, my curiosity only grew. There was no way someone like Zach would be doing something shady, so was it a possible lover? "All right, Lily, tell me what this is all about now." Lily? Was Lily his possible lover? If so, I wasn't even mad at her for ruining the plot this time, I was just disappointed. How could she fall in love with a fake person? Everyone besides her and I are fake and fictional characters that were written by some author. How could she live the rest of her life in this world with Zach when, in her heart, she knows that he and everyone else are nothing more than a book? I guess that's the difference between her and me. Would she even go back to Earth if given the opportunity? Could she even be considered to be from Earth if she completely and utterly accepted her relocation to this book world? Taking me out of my thoughts, Zach's voice once again sounded. "What do you mean you want to keep watch on Ren? Is that how it is?" With the upcoming cruise ship event, I knew that she would definitely keep watch over me to ensure I didn't do anything, but is she really handing the job off to Zach? That would be a huge mistake for her. Such a naive person could easily be fooled just like right now. Even if Zach knew nobody was following him, he still should have taken the call in a 100% secluded place like the bathroom, but he decided to take it outside where countless people could be hiding and listening. Yeah, I've heard the rumors about him, but he doesn't seem to be that type of G-. For the first time, while responding to Zach, I could actually hear Lily's voice as her scream reached my ears despite my distance from Zach's smartwatch. Zach, do you want another girl to be harassed by him? Alright, I'll keep watching him if you're sure. Realizing that their conversation would end soon, I took the same route as I headed straight back to the hotel room. What exactly am I in Zach's eyes, and why does he trust me so much? Maybe Ruby told him something? Hearing Zach open the door of the hotel building, I quickened my pace and rushed towards the hotel room, jumping from shadow to shadow to ensure that my figure wasn't illuminated by the moonlight streaming in from the windows. Approaching the room, I saw a figure standing by the open hotel room, whom I quickly identified as Irene. I had left the dorm room open when I left. Being caught by Zach now would make Lily even more suspicious of me, and she would probably send even more people to keep an eye on me, making me unable to plan. If Irene caught me, what would she do? Stepping out of the shadows and in front of Irene, I placed my hand around her mouth, moved her inside the room, and let the door fall shut behind us. Seeing my face illuminated by the moonlight, Irene murmured through the holes in my hands. "Ah, the hell, you dirty get why your hands off me?" Hearing Zach's approaching footsteps, I whispered into her ear. "I won the poker game and you lost, right? Go back to your room, and don't say anything about me leaving to anyone." If she saw Zach coming back now as well, she would probably report my disappearance to Zach, and Lily would figure out I was following Zach, so I needed to send her away now. Letting go of Irene, I opened the sliding door to her room, revealing Ruby's sleeping figure, and gestured for her to come in. Even in the dark, I could see her red eyes shining with anger and hatred. After shutting the door, I slid into my futon and pretended to be asleep while Zach quietly entered the room and got into his futon. Waking up the next day to dozens of hard knocks on my door, I heard Professor Zia scream through the wall. "Ren, your groupmates are waiting for you downstairs in the breakfast hall. Get up." Looking around the room, I noticed that it was entirely empty. I wasn't even mad that they left me, but more so confused. Didn't they understand what the academy meant when they said, "Groups are required to remain together at all times"? They just didn't bother to wake me up at all? "Yes, Professor, let them know I'm on my way." Taking my time, I imagined my 3 groupmates impatiently staring at the food with angry expressions while I showered and put on a set of casual clothes that I had bought after midterms. As I arrived at the breakfast, the scene was just like my imagination. Ruby, Zach, and Irene were sitting together in silence while staring at the large buffet of food ahead of them. Not informing them of my appearance, I grabbed a plate and searched around the spacious area before loading my plate with food. Satisfied with my plate, I made my way to the table where my 3 groupmates sat impatiently. Irene was the first to speak after seeing me standing in front of them with a plate of steaming hot food. "When the hell did you get here?" Shrugging my shoulders, I responded. "A couple of minutes ago, I think. Might have been longer." Her expression distorting and her eyes burning with red fire, Irene responded. "And you didn't think to let us know? Even though we waited here for over 10 minutes for you." Sitting down at their table, I picked up my fork and replied. "Did you guys let me know when you got up? Is it our job to wake up? Right, guys? Guys." As Irene glanced around, looking for our 2 group mates, who had run to get food during our dispute, I dug into my food while flashing a smirk at the pissed-off Irene. Irene being angry and pissed off was actually essential for my plans today, so I wasn't just doing it to have fun today. After a very awkward and silent breakfast, our group was left with a difficult choice. What exactly do we do? Besides the requirements of completing the tasks and staying in your groups, the school basically gave us complete freedom over what to do. After being ignored by Irene and I for so long, Zach seemed to lose his confidence as he cautiously asked, "So, where should we go today?" Watching the 2 girls stare at their smartwatches in silence in response to Zach's questions, I pretended to think for a second before replying. "Let's just go to the areas recommended by the school." The main reason this trip was so popular was that students were given entire freedom over what to do, yet here we were, following the school's instructions and recommendations like a bunch of sheep. Pulling out the pamphlet given to us on the bus, I opened it to the first page and held it open for my groupmates. The History of Magical Artifacts Museum, or better known as the HMM. Sounds good. Does anyone have any objections? Fine with me. Tisk whatever. Clapping his hands, Zack got up from the bench and headed to the hotel exit, with us following behind. Since the city was so large, we had to take mana trains, which were basically bullet trains from Earth, to get around everywhere. After scanning our student IDs, the four of us got onto the mana train and sat down. Admiring the fleeting scenery of the city through the window, I began to formulate my plan for the day. In preparation for their raid on the cruise ship, the jinns and demons would attack this museum to steal some powerful magic artifacts. Unfortunately for them, I quite liked one of the magical artifacts they were planning to steal. As for the plot hole caused by my interference in this event, I already had a solution. Getting off the train, I followed Zack's lead as we walked towards the looming museum building ahead. Why do you always have to walk up at least 10 stairs to enter a museum? Passing by the normal queue, we headed into the VIP line and displayed our student IDs before being immediately allowed in. The Celestial Academy was just that revered by people in the human realm. Pausing in the museum lobby, Zack turned around and asked, "Any specific exhibit you guys want to go to?" With Zack now being a spy for Lily, it would be far too suspicious if I conveniently suggested the specific exhibit from which the jinns would steal, as I had already led us to choose the museum as our destination. Taking out the school's pamphlet once again, I pretended to fan myself with it while its open pages advertised the special exhibit on stealth-related magical artifacts. After subconsciously seeing it on the pamphlet, it would be Zack's first choice as it was already on his mind, and nobody else suggested anything. Also, the bench we were all sitting on was conveniently only a couple of feet away from the entrance to the special exhibit. Breaking the silence, I immediately let out a sigh as Ruby's cheerful voice spoke out. "Why don't we check out the exhibit on the creation of magical artifacts? Isn't she a high member of the Gemstone Order? Why the hell would she care about creating them when she could have countless of them by her doorstep by just giving an order? Well, I'm already suspicious in Lily's eyes, so who cares if I become more? At least, I can say I tried when Lily eventually figured out that I'm not actually Ren." Standing up, I responded, "I'm going to the stealth artifact exhibit. Why would I have to ask them for permission to go anywhere?" Blocking my path to the exhibit, Zack stepped in front of me and responded, Wait. Let's all decide on one exhibit." Turning around, I looked at Irene, who had put down her smartwatch, and asked, "You're fine with going to the stealth exhibit, right?" It wasn't necessarily an order, so she didn't have to agree, but it was quite obvious that if she disagreed, I would command her to agree. "I don't even care. Let's just go somewhere already." With that, Zack stepped out of my way and bowed down to Ruby. "Sorry, Scarlet, we can go there another day. It seems Ren and Irene want to go to a different exhibit." "It's fine. I just wanted us to go somewhere instead of just sitting around, so I randomly recommended an exhibit. Don't worry about it." As soon as we entered the exhibit, a short film was played, teaching people how to make their footsteps quieter, how to classify monsters using clues such as the size of their footsteps or the range of food they eat, and how to control their heart or breathing rate. This information would be quite useful for a magician, swordsman, or any other class, but as an assassin, I innately have most of these skills, so it was pretty much useless for me. Just as a swordsman has an easier time learning how to use a sword than other classes, I have a much easier time learning stealth and tracking techniques as an assassin. Heading out of the film room, I saw countless full black cloaks, throwing knives, and masks displayed, each with a description of their effect. Since they were displayed in the museum, most of them had decently non-combat related effects, such as a cloak that could never get dirty or a dagger that cut through wood specifically easier than other materials. Of course, the item I was looking for today wasn't displayed here. Rather, it was put in the special area as its ability was combat related. Lingering around the mask area, I paced back and forth, waiting for my groupmates to catch up to me. The artifacts that the jinns and I were aiming to take were far too powerful and rare to be displayed in the museum's open space. One of the jinns infiltrated the museum as an employee and gained information, revealing that the true location of combat-related artifacts was a subspace connected to the museum. Checking the time on my smartwatch, I closed my eyes. The flashing lights of the alarm and the chaos that would ensue would overwhelm my eyesight and give me another headache. I was already almost out of medicine from the train ride alone. The next moment, a high-pitched ring sound began to echo throughout the museum, silencing all the hundreds of footsteps and chatters. Emergency alert! Emergency alert! This is not a drill. Evacuate to your nearest exit. Though I hadn't yet opened my eyes, I could hear the panicked footsteps all running towards what I assumed to be the exit. Interestingly enough, no one screamed or made any calls, showcasing the trust they had in awakened heroes, as they all just rushed towards the fire exit without making much noise. They all assumed that the heroes would arrive and save them, so they ran toward the exit without asking any questions. It's crazy how people can entrust their lives to others without any fight or resistance. Then again, they don't have a choice, such is the fate of those who do not become awakened. Proving the rushing bystanders right, 3 sets of footsteps stepped in the opposite direction of the emergency exit and towards me. Just as expected. Let's help out, guys. Tisk better than looking at this stupid exhibit? Sounds good, Zach. Ruby and Irene, 2 of the book's main antagonists, were now helping save people with a main cast member. Is this what people call the butterfly effect? Opening my eyes, a grin spread across my face as I did what any self-respecting third-rate villain character would do. I'm good on that. You guys have fun, though. Running past my groupmates, who all looked stunned, I sprinted towards the emergency exit without waiting for a response. Which third-rate villain wouldn't run when any form of danger showed up? What did they expect me to do? Help out the richest people in the realm by protecting their museum property for them? Blending into the crowd of people who were pushing and shoving to get into the exit, I took out my daggers and stabbed my hands, causing droplets of blood to fall, not onto the floor, but onto my shoe. If my blood was found on the floor by the investigation team after the incident, there could be massive problems. Finding my way to the right wall of the emergency exit, I stood still, using my awakened strength to avoid being pushed and shoved by the rushing citizens, and stared ahead. Very interesting spot to put a painting, isn't it? Ignoring the people pushing my back, I extended my arm forward right into the painting, and instead of being stopped by the canvas of the painting, it went right through it. Reeling my arm back in, I glanced around before realizing that everyone was so preoccupied with escaping that they didn't pay attention to me. In fact, there were countless other people leaning against the wall like me instead of trying to escape. Since the alarms went off, the djinns should have already infiltrated the subspace, so there was a slight possibility that they could have set a trap for anyone who entered it after them. Feeling another arm pushing against my back, I didn't hesitate as I turned around, grabbed the arm on my back, and threw it into the painting. First, his arms disappeared into the painting, then his head, then his stomach, and finally, his legs disappeared, leaving no trace of his existence outside of the subspace. Wasting no time, I curled up into a ball as I jumped right into the painting after him with my daggers in each hand and a hood over my head, covering most of my face. Similar to a mana gate, my surroundings distorted for a moment before stabilizing and revealing a gigantic room with a ceiling well over 50 feet high and an area big enough to fit at least 1,000 people. In the center of the room, there was a large circle, and on that circle, there were countless pedestals, each with a magical artifact inside. Each pedestal had countless runes flying around it, each rune imbued with some sort of protection or defensive magic. The innocent man who I had thrown in the painting lay passed out on the floor from the warp into the subspace. On the floor, around a dozen guards lay in the circle, their weapons scattered about. In the middle of the circle, there were around 11 djinns, each equipped with a sword or wand. All the djinns seemed to be surrounding one, who was currently midcast while aiming his wand at the runes on the pedestal. In a gigantic and empty room like this, sneaking around would be impossible, so there was no point in trying to assassinate them one by one. Well, it's not like I wanted to do that anyway. Injecting mana into my daggers, a night-black aura immediately enveloped them, completely covering the shiny metal of my daggers, leaving only the black hilt visible. Get a magical artifact and answer my questions about corruption of the night? Don't mind if I do. Assessing that all of the djinns were in the range of low E rank to mid rank, I prematurely activated dash as I ran towards the center of the circle. In the completely silent room, my loud and fast footsteps echoed throughout the massive room, immediately catching the attention of the jinns. "There's one more. Get his ass. Keep him away." Leaving 5 jinns behind to defend the casting jinn, the other 5 immediately rushed toward me, with 2 of them staying at the back of the rush and preparing to cast spells. Does corruption of the night work on humans? Confronted by the 3 sword-wielding jinns, I immediately swung my daggers at the air, releasing a night black slash that barreled toward the charging enemies, causing them to split up as 2 dodged to the right while 1 to the left. After sending another night black slash at the alone jinn, causing him to dodge back further away from his comrades, I used dash, appearing right in front of the 2 jinns. Releasing more mana into my right dagger, I created a holographic dagger as I swung both my daggers at one of the jinns. Unable to block both of my daggers with his sword, the jinn stared at his partner for help. However, the holographic dagger was slashing right at his partner. Faced with the dilemma of protecting his partner or himself, the jinn's true nature was exposed as he used his sword to parry the holographic dagger instead of assisting his helpless partner. The jinn's expression distorted as the holographic dagger went straight through his sword, but by then, it was too late, as I plunged one of my night black daggers right into his partner's chest while allowing other to be parried by his partner's sword. The wound wasn't fatal enough to kill the jinn, but it was strong enough to immobilize him completely. Shaking the jinn's body off my dagger, I allowed it to drop to the floor and then immediately created an X with my daggers to block an aerial strike from the other jinn. Scanning the battlefield, I noticed that the 2 magician jinns were almost done casting as dark purple frisbees appeared above their heads, and the other jinn was done with dodging, so he was rushing towards me. Well, my questions can wait, I guess. Kicking my leg forward, I hit the jinn's stomach, causing him to fall back immediately and lose his balance for a second. That second was all I needed as I freed my daggers and sidestepped to the right before plunging one of my pitch-black daggers into his heart. Huh! The nightback aura on my daggers grew a bit bigger, as the aura now partially covered the hilt of my dagger. After confirming the growth in aura, I swung my daggers at the air, sending an elemental slash to interrupt some of the dark purple frisbees. Activating Dragon's Eye for a brief second, I felt my perception of time slow as I turned around and saw the sword of the jinn already mid-slash and slowly heading toward my head. Feeling my mana reserves diminish, I ducked and deactivated the Dragon's Eye before hurling one of my pitch-black daggers right at the jinn. Caught off guard by my sudden dodge, the jinn's eyes widened as my dagger flew straight at him, and with his sword at his feet due to his last slash's miss, he had no way or time to dodge. Using my other dagger, I faced the remaining dark purple frisbees head-on as they hit my dagger, causing my stance to fault before I flew back due to the impact. After landing on my legs, I had time to sidestep, leading me to narrowly dodge the dark purple frisbees, which my direct opposition had slowed. Picking up my other dagger from the jinn's body, I confirmed that the night black aura had grown again before running toward the 2 magicians. But these magicians weren't defenseless as 2 more sword-wielding jinns had abandoned protecting the casting jinn and stepped up to face me. Prematurely activating dash, I jumped onto one of the pedestals before launching myself upwards and right over the sword-wielding jinns and right toward the magician jinns. The sword-wielding jinns stopped in confusion and stared at me mid-jump. After all, in their eyes, I had completely trapped myself. Even if I managed to kill the 2 magician jinns, I would be immediately surrounded on all sides by the other jinns. Using both of my daggers, I stabbed right at one of the magician jinns before turning around to face the other. Roughly shaking my daggers, I sent the dead magician jinn's body right at the alive one, and then swinging my daggers at the air, I released a night black slash in the same direction. Having his sight blocked by his partner's dead body, the magician jinn dodged to the right, or right in front of my night black elemental slash. Wasting no more time as I saw the remaining jinns slowly surrounding me, I pushed my right foot backward and activated dash, immediately taking me back to the place where the 3 original jinns had met their end. Looking at the remaining jinns' confused faces as they now surrounded a bunch of air, I smiled and said, "It's called a hit and run." However, my smile disappeared as I noticed that the dagger's night black aura hadn't grown with the last kill on the magician jinn. Damn, I have to kill them directly with my daggers, don't I? At that moment, a white light immediately enveloped the area, blinding my eyes for a second. As I reopened them and glanced around, I realized that all the protection runes on the pedestals had been broken. Thus, the caster, along with the 5 remaining jinns, turned all their attention toward me as 5 sword-wielding jinns charged right at me while the caster began casting again. Unfortunately for them, during my previous fights with the sword-wielding jinns, I realized one important thing. All of them used the same fighting style. My eyes were quite good at catching repetition. Looking at the 5 charging jinns, I could see all their next moves. One was posed to use an aerial slash, while another was going to attack my right leg, and the other 3 were going straight for my heart. Lifting my right leg, I kicked it forward until it reached the height of my waist, and then I sent an elemental slash at the area right above the height of my leg before making an X with my daggers right above my head. One jinn missed their attack as my right leg had moved, my daggers parried the other's aerial slash, and finally, the other 3 had been forced to slow down and reposition due to my leg blocking their sword's path to my heart. And then, those 3 met their end with elemental slash as they had slowed down and repositioned themselves to be right in front of the night black slash. More night black aura lost. Taking out the other 2 was relatively easy as I simply preemptively dodged their attacks and then immediately counterattacked, leaving them with no defense. Thus, only the caster was left. Surrounding the caster was a huge cage made of mana. While his comrade jinns had been dying trying to protect him, he had used up all his mana and time to create a shield to save him and only himself. Walking up to the cage, I ignored the trembling caster's figure as I touched my pitch-black daggers to the mana of the cage. At the point where they touched, the blue mana cage turned black, and that black began to spread rapidly until, after a minute, the cage was entirely black. The caster could no longer see anything out of the cage, but I could still see inside due to my enhanced eyesight. Stepping into the black mana cage, I felt at home. This was an assassin's perfect environment. Everything was pitch black, so you couldn't see anything, or in other words, the perfect place for an assassin to sneak around without any worries of being caught. Peering through the darkness with my eyesight, I spotted for caster clumsily trying to navigate his surroundings as he bumped into pedestals and rocks almost every second. Jumping from pedestal to pedestal, I reached the caster without making a single sound before swiftly plunging my night black dagger right into his heart. When I walked out of the cage, the sudden light blinded me for a second before I started my search through the various artifacts. After a moment, I finally found what I was looking for. Shadowbinder Cloak/Effect. All the user's attacks and abilities are boosted by 10% when in an area with a lack of light. Putting on the cloak, I used to hood to completely conceal my face as I walked back to where I had entered the subspace and saw another painting. Picking up the unconscious civilian body from earlier, I silently prayed for him for a second before once again throwing him through the painting. A moment later, I popped through the painting, and I was immediately overwhelmed as there were still crowds of people in the emergency exit area. In the chaos, many people must have taken the chance to steal artifacts, so the guards were probably checking every person who left to ensure nothing had been stolen. Of course, my other 3 groupmates were nowhere to be seen. They were probably still fighting against the forces the jinns had used to distract the museum so that they wouldn't discover the breach in the subspace. Glancing around for a moment, I smiled as I grabbed the painting and pulled my hood down ever further. Why would I leave behind the treasures in the subspace? What am I, stupid? Even if they're of no use to me, they could probably sell for a load of money. Fun fact, subspaces are connected to objects, so by taking this painting, I am essentially taking the subspace. Now, just one problem. How do I get out of here with the painting? Taking the painting off the wall, I attempted to hide it beneath my shirt, but it was far too big as the frame peeked out from below my new cloak. Even if it were smaller, it wouldn't have worked as the guards would have easily spotted it through the abnormal shape of my cloak. The number of people in the emergency exit area was dwindling, so sooner or later, someone would notice the fact that I was holding a painting and call me out. Taking out my smartwatch, I immediately sent a message. Rin, outside the museum emergency exit, now. Completely covering my face with my new cloak, I activated the dash's usage period before instantly pushing aside everyone with my awakened strength and sprinting through. Like Moses parted the Red Sea, I created a path through the crowd of civilians by simply pushing them away with my hands. Nearing the security checkpoint, I slowed to a walking pace and patiently watched. Dash wasn't teleportation. I could move 10 meters in any direction if and only if there were no obstacles or humans blocking my path. Honing in on the checkpoint, I saw that there were multiple lines, each consisting of a search of your body and other items. After that, the guards opened a gate, allowing you to exit the building. Getting into one of the shorter lines, I tapped my right eye, using up the last of my mana, and activated Dragon's Eye, causing my perception of time to slow. As the guard opened a small gap in the gate, just big enough for the civilian at the front of the line to pass through, I activated Dash. Since Dragon's Eye was still active when I dashed, I saw the guard slowly close the gate more, so I immediately curled myself even more, allowing me to fit through the gate. Landing on one of the countless staircase steps outside the museum, I lost my balance and began to fall face-first onto the floor, but I stabbed my daggers into the ground, regaining my balance. Putting my daggers in my new cloak, I walked down the stairs with the painting still in my hands and visible to everyone else before spotting a familiar face. Leaning against a bicycle, I saw a scrawny teenager with messy black hair and pitch-black eyes that oddly resembled the color of my night black aura. Wasting no time with introductions, I got on the bicycle and handed Raven the painting before gesturing for him to get on the seat as well. Glancing at the painting in his hands and the commotion outside the museum, Raven sighed before speaking. "Is this painting really worth all of this? Seriously, boss, this might be a new low even for you." Earlier, I had been avoiding looking at or examining the painting as it would give me a headache, but giving in to my curiosity, I glanced at the painting for the first time. It was interesting. No, who the hell comes to a museum to see this? Making sure that Raven had a tight hold on the painting, I put my legs on the pedal and responded. "I made a lot of money, alright, don't ask any questions." "You say that, but then it's my job to clean everything up. Just say you liked the painting and wanted it." Recalling the image of the painting in my head, I immediately responded. "No, just no. I did not want the painting for what was on its canvas." "Alright, if that's your story, boss." Flying past the museum, I pedaled with all my strength until, finally, the crowd of reporters and civilians surrounding the area was no longer visible. Stepping off the bicycle, I put away my cloak in the backpack before turning to Raven and carefully handing him back the painting. "Take this back to the office. You made me take a train all the way here so that I could go right back? This painting is worth more than you. It'll fund our scroll business. Maybe this is worth a lot to you. Most people aren't into this kind of stuff, boss. Didn't I already tell you? Never mind. Alright, just take it back." Nodding his head, Raven carefully concealed the painting using a cover he had brought before. Then, he put the cover on his back like a backpack and got onto the bicycle while staring at me with an expression that said, "Really, you stole this out of all things in a museum?" As he prepared to leave, I suddenly recalled something, so I called out. "There's a person still alive inside the painting, so don't go inside it." Later, I'd check on that guy to see if my corruption truly worked on humans. Ignoring the fact that Raven almost fell off his bicycle after my last words, I made my way back to the museum's entrance just in time to witness a show. 3 people descended from the sky like angels, each equipped with a cloak plastered with the royal family symbols. The heroes had come to save the day. Of course, the day was already saved by my groupmates, but these officials just had to keep up the stereotype of always showing up after everything was done. Leaning against the railing of the stairs, I pulled out my smartwatch and waited for my groupmates, ignoring the reporters crowding around the heroes. After a couple of minutes, I suddenly heard a thunderous applause, so I turned my head towards the emergency exit area and saw my 3 groupmates leaving while waving to the admiring members of the audience. They do know that 2 of the 3 people they're waving at will become humanity's greatest enemy, right? As the 3 descended down the staircase, I casually joined them, acting as if nothing had happened. After a minute of silence, I turned to Zach and nonchalantly asked, "How was it?" Jumping back in shock, Zach almost tripped and fell down the stairs before responding. "Aaron, when did you get here?" Not giving me any time to respond, Irene immediately spoke up as if she had been waiting for this opportunity. "Oh, while we were out saving people, you want to guess what he was doing? Helping evacuate the people? Calling for help? Nope, he was on his smartwatch. What an outstanding student. Truly representing Celestial Academy perfectly." Shrugging my shoulders, I matched her overly cheerful tone as I replied, "You know, I really do try my best." "Your recognition really goes a long way, Irene." Interrupting our words of sarcasm, Ruby asked, "Aren't you guys hungry? Let's get something to eat." "Good idea, Scarlett." The school recommended a place nearby. Following Zach, the four of us headed into the hot pot restaurant that the school had recommended. The restaurant was completely empty beside us, so as we entered, the television immediately entered our ears. In the recent attack on the HMM by Jinns, brave students from Celestial Academy, alongside heroes from the Central Dominion, stepped up to protect, ensuring that everyone was safe. The museum has yet to make a statement, but from our reporters on the scene can estimate that about 10 people were injured in the attack. So, they still haven't found out about the missing subspace? Shouldn't that be the first place they look after a robbery, considering it contains the highest value items? After ordering and eating the food, the four of us explored all the monuments and historical sites mentioned by the school. After 1 hour had passed since we ate, the mood of the group became eerily silent as we all waited for our first task to be assigned. However, as time passed and the clock eventually reached 6, no task was assigned to us. Weird, isn't Liam's group doing a task right now? As we entered the hotel dining hall for dinner, we heard various rumors already spreading around. "Didn't you hear Group 6 already got sent home for failing their task?" "Already? How is that even possible? The task was so easy." "Idiot, we all have different tasks assigned to us." Sitting down at the same spot as breakfast, Zach was the first to break the awkward silence as he asked, "Why didn't we get any task?" Putting down my fork, I replied, "Why are you complaining about not getting a task? Shouldn't we be happy?" Taking my smartwatch, I continued to refresh the latest news websites, but there was no news of any museum items being stolen. In the statement made by the museum, they didn't even mention anything about stolen artifacts or paintings. They just addressed the safety concerns. In the book, it wasn't mentioned if the museum released the news of the stolen artifacts, so maybe things are still going according to the plot? But then again, why wouldn't the museum mention the stolen items? Having the support of the public in finding lost artifacts would be a great help. Finishing up the last of the food, I was about to get up and head back to the hotel room when Professor Zia suddenly appeared in front of our table. The news of the recent museum attack and your involvement had already spread to almost everywhere in this city. First, I want to thank you for upholding the values of Celestial Academy by standing your ground and protecting the citizens from the Jinns instead of running away to save yourself. To honor you for saving and protecting the museum, the Academy and Museum will be holding an award ceremony tomorrow. More details will be sent to your phone later, but as your teacher, I just wanted to mention how proud I am of you. Your heroic actions will not go unnoticed as long as I am around. After hearing those words come out of the professor's mouth, grins spread on everyone's face for a moment, but when Professor Zia left, everyone's glaze slowly wandered over to me. "There is a fake among us." With a cold and deep voice, Irene said. She said didn't she? Don't tell me I'm hearing things. Afraid to talk due to the coldness in Irene's voice, Zach silently nodded his head while Ruby simply continued staring at me. "Why are you staring at me? We are both villains. Why would we help the heroes by attacking our own kind instead of just walking away?" With a grin, I broke the tension by cheerfully exclaiming, "It truly was a team effort." After waking up the next morning, I checked my smartwatch and noticed that the email mentioned by Professor Zia had been sent. In fact, it had not just been sent to us four, but the entire school had received it. Now, everyone is aware of my amazing actions. As our group ate our breakfast awkwardly, a sudden vibration erupted from all of our smartwatches. Checking my email, I saw that the school had just sent us an email. Task number 1. Make your way to the attached location and complete the puzzle inside. Time limit, 1 hour. Clicking on the attached image, I saw a half-broken-down hut that seemed to be located on the outskirts of the city. Alongside the picture, there was also a set of coordinates for us to use. Instantly, the four of us got up from our table, leaving behind our plates of food, and rushed out of the hotel building. Leading us was Zach as he asked, "The mana train is the fastest way there, right?" Nodding our heads in approval to Zach's question, the four of us sprinted through the city and to the nearest train station. Ignoring the long line of civilians outside the train stations, the four of us flashed our student IDs to the security guards and skipped the entire line. Descending down the stairs, the four of us finally arrived at the drop-off station for the mana train. However, alongside a gigantic crowd, a flashing sign awaited us. Due to unforeseen circumstances, the arrival of all mana trains has been delayed 15 minutes. Please bear with us, and we thank you for your patience. Opening the navigation map on my smartwatch, I plugged in the coordinates and calculated the amount of time we would have after the train ride. 15 minutes. As I turned to face my groupmates, who were doing the exact same thing, Zach asked, "The mana train is the fastest way, right?" Checking my smartwatch once again, I saw that walking would take 3 hours while traveling by bicycle or carriage would take 1.5 hours. Tasks were the only weakness in my entire plan. If I failed a task and was sent back to the academy before reaching the cruise ship, there was nothing I could do. After what seemed like an eternity, the sound of screeching entered my ears, signifying the arrival of the train. Pushing past the crowd, our group squeezed our way into a compartment and found some seats. When the station before ours was announced, the four of us stood up and camped beside the train doors. As the train doors slid open, I was the first to exit as I sprinted through the crowd, twisting and turning through the gaps between people. Feeling the sunlight on my head, I glanced around and noticed there were almost 0 people, so I started to speed up. Nearing the hut from the attachment, I turned around and saw Irene and Ruby slightly behind me while Zach was in the distance. Stopping at the entrance to the ragged hut, I took a breather while Ruby caught up to me and asked, "This might be the first time I've seen you serious. Why the change in attitude?" "Oh, maybe I'll dash." Interrupting Ruby's speculation was Irene, who responded from behind us, "Who the hell cares? Let's just get this over with." After another few moments, Zach caught up to us, panting like a dog and sweating bullets while staring at us in amazement. Contrary to its rugged and broken-down exterior, the inside of the hut was actually quite cozy. There were 2 armchairs, a polished wooden table, and a well-made bed. Sitting down on one of the armchairs, I tried examining the entire hut again with my eyes, but nothing else was revealed. Still standing at the entrance, Zach also glanced around the hut for a second before asking, "What exactly is the puzzle here?" Sitting down on the bed side by side, Ruby and Irene stayed silent, also pondering the next course of action. With the time limit of 1 hour closing in, the four of us got more desperate for clues on the puzzle as we basically flipped the entire room upside down, searching under all the furniture. Even I was at a loss for words. Was the school trying to screw me over? Interrupting our frantic search of the room was a sudden voice. "Congratulations on reaching the hut. Please, all of you, take a seat." Sound magic? Following the sound's directions, Zach and I sat across from each other on the armchairs while the other 2 sat on the bed. Completing this task can either be easy or very difficult. Please open the last book on the 3rd shelf of the bookcase and read it for instructions. There is no time limit. All you must do is complete what is said in the book. Although, I would appreciate it if you finished it as soon as possible. I am required to stay at the school until your competition. Also, don't worry about me listening in. The sound connection in the room will be cut off, no dash. Leaning against the armchair, I relaxed my tensed body. Sure, it was odd that the school was giving us a task with no time limit, but at least I have time to plan now. If that voice hadn't come out at that exact moment, I would have probably done something drastic, like burning down the hut or cutting it into a million pieces. Irene, not sharing the same sentiment, immediately rushed to the bookshelf and grabbed the mentioned book. Watching Irene's expression as she read the book, I saw her face twitch up and distort into a disgusted expression before she put the open book onto the table. Getting to know your teammates is essential for cooperating as heroes, both inside and outside dungeons. This leads us to your current task, the truth game. During this game, each person creates a question and asks it to one of their teammates. Each person must ask and answer a question. The game ends after this. Finally, if anyone is detected to be lying, you will all automatically fail the task and be sent back to the academy. Our group's faces displayed a variety of expressions. Irene remained disgusted, Zach's expression lit up, Ruby wore a grin, and I remained indifferent. Surely, we have no idiots among us who decide to ask a stupid-ass question? Breaking the silence, I calmly asked. So we're not going to be idiots, are we? Since I wasn't asking a specific person, this wouldn't count as my question, but maybe the others would believe I had wasted my question. I could ascertain Ruby's true intentions possibly, but of course, completing the task came first. Ren, what's your favorite color? Zach, it's blue. Hey Zach, what's your favorite color? Thanks for asking, it's red. Well, there goes my answer and question. Well, even if Ruby did answer my question, she would have to expose her identity as a villain to both Zach and Irene, and that would cause some trouble. Turning my head to face the two girls, I saw Ruby turn to Irene and say, "Who do you lead, Ash? Is this what the school wanted us to do during this damned truth game? Ask each other about our favorite colors and romantic interests? What are we?" As I stared at Ruby, who still held a smile while speaking, I honestly had no idea what she was thinking. What could have compelled a great and powerful antagonist to ask another great and powerful antagonist who they liked? Interrupting Ruby's question midway, I asked Irene, "What's your favorite color, Irene?" There was no rule about not being able to ask more than one question. All it said was everyone must ask and answer a question for the game to end. I wasn't about to risk my entire plan because someone wanted to know someone else's love interest. Ahem, I like the color red as well. Now that Irene had answered a single question, she had no obligation to answer any other questions. For the game to end now, Ruby would have to answer and ask a question, and Irene would also have to ask a question. From the bed, Ruby tilted her head before asking, "Ren, why did you do that?" Since I had also answered a question, I had no obligation to answer hers, but knowing Ruby, she would probably refuse to ask any other question, leading to the four of us being stuck here for ages. If she wanted to, Ruby could force us to answer any question by just refusing to ask any other. Could I mix in some lies and truth in my answer, or was it all required to be true? Deciding against risking failure on this task, I answered truthfully. I didn't want to fail the task. Instantly, Irene's gaze at me transformed into a glare. "What are you looking at me for? You know damn well you were about to lie." Although I was curious about Ruby's intentions with that question and, as a whole, I didn't want her to reveal her villain identity or just lie, so I asked. However, a moment before my question, Irene's voice spoke out. "Why did you ask that, Scarlet? What's your favorite color, Scarlet?" I just saved her, and now she's already screwing me over? The rules didn't mention anything about answering if two questions were asked at the same time, so Ruby would probably get to choose which question she answered. With a grin remaining on her face, Ruby turned to Irene and responded, "I wanted to make sure our likes didn't overlap." With that last answer, the door of the hut flung open as everyone had asked and answered a question truthfully. The rest of the train ride back was spent in silence, but I didn't really mind it as we had completed the task. There was some animosity between Ruby and Irene, but they would have to get over it eventually. I still had some curiosity about Ruby's last answer, but like Irene and Zach, I didn't question it further. Does she also like Liam? She was said to enjoy the company of powerful people, so it's not out of the question. Looking at Irene, who was twitching, I wondered how this would affect her. She already had Lily as a competitor, so with Ruby in the play, she might just give up. After arriving back at the hotel, the four of us put on our academy uniforms before heading into the award ceremony, which was held in the hotel lobby. Sitting down in the front row with Ruby next to me, I glanced around and saw some familiar faces from the book. However, there was one face that almost made me pull out my daggers and charge. Ren's former father was here. Dressed in an expensive and elaborate suit with his long black hair tied into a ponytail, Ren's father mingled with the other important figures, including Irene's father, while eating from a plate of food. My anger at Ren's father, mixed with Ren's fear of his father leaking into my own emotions, immediately caused my legs to tremble with an undescribable emotion. Before I knew it, my shining, blood-red eyes locked onto him, refusing to let his figure out of my sight. Do I just kill him now? Who's going to stop me? This asshole doesn't deserve to live another day. Snapping me out of my trance, I heard a familiar voice call out from my right. Lot of animosity between you two, isn't there? Forcing myself to turn my head away from Ren's former father, I looked at Ruby while suppressing all my emotions. While I couldn't suppress Ren's emotions specifically, I could simply quell all my emotions. It's one-sided. Yeah, I'm sure he's already forgotten about your existence. Before I knew it, my hands were raised off my lap as I replied. Are you trying to piss me off? Letting out a laugh, Ruby imitated me by raising her hands and responding. No, it's just interesting to see someone like you showcase so much emotion. It's actually quite nice, you know? Interrupting our conversation, a man in an extravagant suit walked up to the stage before picking up a microphone, which could also be considered an artifact due to its embedded sound magic, and started speaking. Welcome all, far and wide, to this event hosted by the Museum of Magical Artifacts. With the rising amount of Jinn attacks on humanity, those who can confidently step up and protect our fellow humans at the cost of their own lives are rare. Didn't he just say the opposite of what I am? Well, I am protecting the world by ensuring things go according to the plot, but is it really protecting millions of people to die in the process? Where's the moral line start and end? Today at this fine establishment, we are here to honor those few people who stepped up to the task in the recent Jinn attack at the museum. As students of the famed Celestial Academy and as civilians who protected your fellow humans against the dangers of the world, I extend my greatest thanks to you 4 brave souls. As a deafening applause echoed throughout the room, the event organizer gestured to us, so we all slowly got up and walked up the stairs to the stage. Walking to the podium, I used my eyes and saw some familiar faces, such as Liam, Lily, Alya, Kevin, and Astrid. Wait, Astrid? Aren't third years on a break after exams? Why is she here? As the 4 of us stood next to the podium and the applause died down, another figure, Irene's dad or the headmaster of the magical tower, walked up the stairs. With long red hair that went all the way down to his shoulders and black eyes, he wore an indifferent expression as he walked in front of the podium. However, with my eyes, I could see his face practically twitching with excitement. On behalf of the Magic Tower, I would like to once again thank you 4 for protecting the museum of our magical artifacts and the tourists inside. As we understand that this ceremony isn't nearly enough to repay you, I would be willing to help out of any of you in the future to the best of my abilities. Grabbing 4 gold medals from under the podium, Irene's dad or Sean walked over to us, starting with Zach. After placing a gold medal around Zach's neck, he turned to his daughter, Irene, and smiled before wrapping another gold medal around her neck. Giving Ruby the same treatment as Zach, Sean turned to me, displaying a somewhat bewildered expression, before awkwardly placing a gold medal around my neck. He recognized me. It's probably awkward to give a medal and thank someone who was once your best friend's son. As the award ceremony was now officially over, the doors flung open, inviting people to leave. However, no one moved. This room held some of the most important people on the entire continent, so leaving first would undeniably make a bad impression. Also, it was a chance for people to build important connections by talking. Heading down the stage, I immediately saw the main cast group waiting for Irene and Zach, so I walked past them and headed outside. Even if I was technically the guest of honor, no one would notice my disappearance, so I could sneak out from the terrace. When I opened the double doors, the cold evening wind immediately rushed and enveloped me, causing me to shiver, but my focus was on something else. Looking out the terrace, I saw a gigantic cruise ship, the size of more than 10 mansions, sitting by the port with the Academy flag next to it. The main event had finally arrived. Feeling a gaze on my back, I turned around and saw Ruby. Her long black hair fluttered in the breeze, and her red eyes were once again visible as she had removed her contacts. With all the important people in this room, I had half expected Ruby to do something drastic, like blow up the entire hotel, but after seeing her mess around with Irene earlier, I was pretty sure she wasn't planning anything for the time being. As our blood-red eyes met, Ruby tilted her head, staring at the port before asking, "Already trying to leave? Would you want to stay if you were in my situation?" The people attending the event consisted of nobles who despised fallen nobles like me, students who also hated me, and my father, who disowned me. Could it even get worse? The entire heroes party, who also hated me, was attending as well. I'd probably stay, actually. And why is that? Revenge is a dish best served piping hot, isn't it? Isn't that saying C-? You get my point, Ren? The only thing stopping me from trying to assassinate Ren's father was the plot point of his character. Not the powerful people guarding him, his political authority, or even the immense power he wielded. I could find ways around all of those given time. Taking revenge on Ren's father was the least I could do for the original Ren after I stole his body, life, and basically everything from him, wasn't it? Ren's father also posed a serious threat to me, as the original Ren's fear would always appear when I was near him, causing me to lose my focus, which is instant death in a fight. It'll have to wait. Trying to get some clues on Ruby, I asked. You seem to know a bit about revenge. Anyway, don't you think sneaking off as one of the guests of honors would only serve to decrease your reputation? Yet again, she answers my question with another question. When you hit rock bottom, there is only one way to go, up. Letting out a scoff at my clear sarcasm, Ruby walked up beside me at the edge of the terrace and leaned against the railing. Well, let's go then. What? Were you planning on leaving your boss, an evil villain, behind in a room full with heroes that could decimate her at any moment? Sighing, Ruby put her hands on the railing. Well, you're the one who wanted to leave so bad. Let's go. Taking the lead, I jumped over the railing and onto the ground, which was only about a 10-foot down jump. Landing silently on the ground with my assassin skills, I waited for Ruby, who hesitated for a moment after watching me jump before surrounding her legs and feet with fire and jumping. Kneeling down on the ground, Ruby looked up and asked, "How the hell can you do that?" Revealing my class choice to a potential enemy in the future would be dangerous, as I sarcastically responded. Genetics. Paying no mind to Ruby's confused face, I walked into the forest surrounding the hotel and towards the gigantic cruise ship figure that could still be seen through the gaps in the trees. In the silence of the evening, only the occasional bird chirping alongside the sound of branches breaking from Ruby trailing behind me could be heard. Reaching the port, I looked down into the ocean and saw the familiar scene of seaweed swaying at the seafloor alongside dozens of fish swimming about. Feeling my brain flooded with all the information my eyes took in, I immediately looked up to the dazzling cruise ship that seemed to reach the sky. Catching up to me, Ruby admired the cruise ship for a moment before curiously asking, "So, what exactly are we doing?" "What are we doing, Ruby?" Sarcasm just feels weird when it comes out of your mouth. I'm the weird one. Aren't you the mob boss who just got crowned a hero and defender against djinns? PFT, when you dashed out of there, I was about to die of laughter. Anyway, can't villains have a little bit of heroism? Heroism? An antagonist who aided in the slaughtering of countless humans is talking about heroism. I mean, Ren, I get you're all evil, but some of us are different. Did I just get called evil by a future human killing machine? I'm here working my ass off to save the world, just to be called evil by objectively one of the most evil people in the future world. Am I actually evil? I just don't care anymore. Good and evil are just a bunch of words, so who cares? Not me. Raising my hand up, I waved goodbye to Ruby before jumping off the port and plunging into the water. IT was just a joke, don't jump. What is it with people yelling stupid stuff at me while I'm jumping into bodies of water? First, Raven and now her? Seriously, who is she to decide if I'm evil or not? But maybe I'll help out a bit more in the future. Not because of her. What happens after I save the world and everything is fine? Do I want to be known as the scumbag of the Empire for the rest of my life here? Feeling the cold ocean water embrace me, I basked in its comfort before diving further into the water until my hand finally touched the sea floor. Looking upwards, I saw the huge cruise ship floating above me, and I tensed my legs before lunging upwards toward the bottom of the cruise ship. Tracing my hand along the rough exterior of the cruise ship, I took out my daggers, which were concealed in my pockets, and plunged them both into the bottom of the ship. No longer having to put any effort into floating, I let my body sway with the current as I hung onto my daggers. Removing one of the daggers, I ensured that the hole in the ship's exterior was deep enough before placing an explosive that I had acquired before the trip through the black market. Of course, I didn't involve Raven in this purchase as I couldn't imagine what he would think of me after hearing I wanted to buy an explosive. Putting my dagger back into the ship's exterior, I pushed the small explosives as far as I could into the hole before removing my other dagger and doing the same thing with some leftover fireworks from Alya's kidnapping. If metal detectors were a thing in this era, I would have been long caught as my suitcase would have triggered every possible alarm in the system. I filled the holes in the ship with sand I had gotten from the ocean floor, concealing my daggers once again before swimming up to the surface of the water. Looking upwards, I saw Ruby waiting for me at the port, her glossy black hair practically dazzling in the moonlight. Pulling myself onto the wooden planks of the port, I walked towards Ruby, with water droplets falling from my hair, clothes, and arms. Looking at Ruby's perplexed expression, I shrugged my shoulders and said, "What can I say? I was in the mood for a quick swim. Don't you feel cold at all?" Most normal people probably would have gotten hypothermia from doing this, but what can I say, I was blessed by the sea god. The next few days flowed by without any trouble as we received various tasks ranging from solving a puzzle around the city to taking care of a sudden outbreak of monsters in the forest nearby. In the forest, we met up with 3 other groups, who were assigned to the same task and dispatched the horde of goblins without any trouble. As the horde of 10 goblins approached our group of 12 students, I was the first to step away from the front line. Watching Irene cast countless fireballs, Ruby with her fire tornadoes, and Zack charging into the battlefield with his battle axe in his hands, I patiently waited until the entire battlefield was covered by smoke before making my move. Using dash to appear in the center of the battlefield, I took out my daggers, now completely covered in a night black aura, before locating the various goblins with my eyes. Like a true assassin, I silently crept around the battlefield, killing each goblin with a clean dagger strike right into the heart. As the aura surrounding my dagger grew in size, I could also feel my mana capacity growing bigger, and my elemental slashes seemed to grow more powerful. The corruption of the night was essentially fuel for the rest of the movements. The more fuel you had, the longer you could use other skills and the more powerful they were. As for my planning, I was able to find time to visit various stores and areas without the others noticing. Well, Ruby would notice occasionally and tag along, but I didn't really mind as she didn't question my motives. Thus, the last day of the training camp arrived, and only one group was sent home for failing a task. Walking up the ramp to the ship, I could feel the freedom as we were no longer forced to stick together with our group besides the banquet in the evening. Immediately heading to my room, I pulled out my new cloak from my backpack and laid it out on my bed. After getting my room situated, I headed back down the stairs to the breakfast hall, where hundreds of students were already eating and talking. Waiting at the hostess stand, I looked around for a second before confirming that there were indeed no tables left. The hall should have been large enough to accommodate our first years, but the problem was that students were sitting at the tables with empty plates and talking instead of just leaving. Currently, we are at maximum capacity. However, if you're willing to share a table with another guest, we can accommodate you in 2 minutes. Nodding my head, I sat down in the restaurant lobby while browsing my smartwatch. Let's see what my luck decides to be today, G or S+. Better to know it now than to be surprised during the incident when 10 S+ ranks randomly show up and jump me. Receiving a gesture from the waiter, I got up and followed her to a table that sat in the corner of the hall and right next to the window, displaying the sea that seemed to sparkle under the sunlight. Sitting down at one of the 3 chairs, I wasted no time grabbing my plate and heading towards the buffet area. Today was going to be a long day. No matter how much planning and strategizing I did, there were bound to be variables that could cause me to adjust or even completely change my plan, rendering all my effort useless. After scooping a variety of food onto my plate, I headed back to my table, where a bag was now wrapped around one of the chairs. Taking out my smartwatch, I sent a quick message to Han and Jean, letting them know I would be unavailable today. Ren, will be busy today. Jean? I'm This banquet is actually the perfect place for you to get with that girl. Ren, what girl? Han, he's talking about the transfer student, I think. Yeah, let me just ask out my boss, who is one of the biggest threats to the world. Ren? Yeah, Jean, why don't worry about getting a girl yourself? Jean, low blow. Han, he's right, you know. Jean, look at who's talking. Han, really? Putting down my smartwatch, I began to enjoy the scrambled eggs and toast on my plate. The soft and fluttery texture of the eggs danced on my tongue, while the toast's saltiness perfectly complemented the eggs. The sweetness of the apple juice next to me just made the already amazing meal immaculate. If only the Academy cafeteria food was this good. During my last fight in the museum, I accidentally learned about the third movement of the shadow arts. When I placed my corrupted daggers to the mana cage of the caster, I had done it as a subconscious reaction, and it had caused the blue mana cage to turn to pitch black. What if I made a mana cage of my own and then corrupted it so I could have my class's perfect environment whenever I wanted? That was the whole idea of the third movement. A shadow cage. By spreading out my mana and creating a mana cage, then corrupting the cage with my daggers, I could create an area with absolutely no light, activating my cloak and creating the flawless habitat for an assassin. The third movement also increased my capability in handling spell attacks, as by touching my dagger to a spell attack like a fireball, I could somewhat corrupt it and take control of it. If I held my daggers long enough to a fireball, I could completely steal control over the spell and send it right back at the caster. Well, the domain part was easier said than done, as after an entire week of practicing, I could barely even cover myself with the shadow cage. The entire movement depended on my ability to control and spread my mana, and my ability to do that was connected with the severity of the wound on my hands. So, technically, I already had full mastery over the movement. If I made a deep enough wound on my hand without killing myself, I could flawlessly create a shadow cage whose size would be unknown even to me. Of course, with the cruise ship incident coming up, I hadn't been crazy enough to do something like that, but who knows what could happen on the cruise ship. Snapping me out of my thoughts, a very jolly voice suddenly came out from my left side. Hey Ren, even though we're not required to stay together anymore, I think as groupmates, we should still st-. I'd rather jump off the ship, Zach. Actually, well, I was assigned to sit here by the waitress, so if you don't mind, I'll g-. I actually do mind. This confrontation alone has ruined my appetite. Ignoring Zach's crumbling figure, I picked up my fork and went in for another bite when another voice sounded from in front of me. Ren? Are you two sitting here as well? A very relieved Zach sparked up at the prospect of not being alone with me as he responded. Scarlet, hey. Yeah, we were sitting he-. Who's we? I just said I do mind. Ignore him, Zach. He's grumpy in the mornings. How would you know that? Ignoring my question like always, Ruby headed towards the buffet with Zach following behind like a sad golden retriever. Well, I guess I'm in for a streak of bad luck today. I would say, at least Irene isn't here, but at this point, I wouldn't be surprised in the slightest if she just appeared at the table. But seriously, what were the odds of us three all deciding to eat at the same exact time? After finishing the last of my eggs, I decided against going for another round and instead went back to my room. Sitting down on my bed in a lotus meditating pose, I stabbed the tip of my dagger slightly into the palm of both my hands, feeling the mana immediately flowing alongside my blood to the wounds. Instead of controlling my mana and channeling it all into my daggers, I did my best to let my mana run wild as a small blue barrier surrounded my figure, trapping me inside. Feeling the amount of mana decreasing, I stopped the leaking of mana and began sending the blue orbs into my daggers. Seeing the pitch-black aura surrounding my daggers, I placed the tip of one of them onto the blue cage. The intersection spot became black, then quickly spread like a plague before covering the entire cage in pitch black. This movement did not require skill or practice. It was simply, put more mana in, get a bigger cage. After 1 week of trying to use the movement, I had finally come to that conclusion. Then, how does one progress to the next movement? I technically already have full mastery of this movement, yet the information on the next movement still isn't available. Drawing back in my mana, the cage disappeared, revealing the sun shining through my cabin's window. I had hit a wall in progression for the Eclipse arts, so is time to switch? Well, if I had hit a regular wall in progress for my Eclipse art, then I would have hit the Great Wall of China in my progress for Dragon's Will. No progression had been made in that at all. Menu ===. User, Ren Montclair. Class, Rookie Assassin, Level 2, 92%. Stealth, B+. Intermediate Dagger Mastery, 95%. Arts, Eclipse Blade, 3/5. Stats. Rating, D. Dream not yet completed. Strength, E+. Agility. Stamina, E+. Magic Power, D+. Luck. Conditional. Intelligence, E. Charm, T+. Traits. Passive, Dragon's Will, 1/. Dragon Eyes, your eyesight is enhanced. Skills. Not requiring any mana usage, the skill allows the user to move 10 meters from their current location in any direction with a cooldown period of 7 seconds. The skill does not instantly move the user but temporarily increases the user's speed until they move 10 meters. Completing my next dream would take who knows how long, so I decided to attempt it any time after the cruise ship incident. Getting off my bed, I patched up the small wounds on my hands before walking to my room's terrace. Yes, every single room on this gigantic cruise ship had a terrace. Putting my hands on the railing, I peered down into the ocean, examining the various species of fish and resisting the urge to jump off the railing and into the ocean below. At this point, it just felt like second nature to do so. With all my preparations made, I passed the time by covering any wounds with bandages and peering into the ocean with a wistful gaze like a king looking over his kingdom. Hanging my cloak on my shoulders but not putting my arms through the sleeves, I walked out of the hotel room, the bottom of my cloak hovering right above the floor. My main goal was not to allow Liam to defeat the jinns, as in the book, rather, it was to allow the jinns to take hostages. Enraged by the jinns' actions against his fellow classmates, Liam unlocks a new ability and uses it to defeat the jinns. This ability is used throughout the book, so Liam's not receiving it would pose a massive threat to my attempts to maintain the plot. By analyzing Lily's past interferences in the book, it was clear that she wanted to protect and ensure the safety of innocent bystanders. So, I was almost certain that she would make a play here to prevent hostages from being taken, inadvertently stopping Liam from unlocking his new ability. But what was the play? Walking down the set of stairs, I finally reached the banquet area, where I could see various luxurious chandeliers hanging from the high ceiling, countless tables spread about, and even a dance floor, which was currently empty. Each table was shared between two groups, and with my current luck, I had a decent idea of which group I was going to sit with. Well, can I really call it bad luck? What if sitting with them is actually good luck? Finding my table, I saw Irene and Zach sitting at the table next to some empty seats. Zach wore a tuxedo with a red bow tie, and his short brown hair was slicked back, revealing his regular-sized forehead. On the other hand, Irene wore a one-piece red dress that revealed the pale white skin on her right leg while the other leg was completely covered. Her red hair was tied back in a ponytail, and her eyes seemed to contain more fire in them than usual. The empty seats either had bags or backpacks near them, so it seemed that the other group had arrived but left already to get their food. Of course, Zach and Irene were stuck waiting for Ruby and I. Glancing at the food area, I saw everyone was either wearing suits or elegant dresses, making me and my cloak, which wasn't even properly on, look out of place. There was no dress code. What is this? Pushing back my hair off my forehead, I sat down on the chair next to Zach and patiently waited for Ruby. After another minute, I saw Ruby walking into the banquet area in a black dress that sparkled when light reflected against it. Her glossy, long black hair was parted to the right. Upon seeing Ruby, the three of us got up and headed to the food area, which already had a long line of people. Despite the hundreds of people in the room, I could feel Irene's piercing gaze locked onto me. Didn't Ruby arrive later than me? Why am I being blamed? Interrupting my thoughts, I heard Ruby's voice speak out from behind me. You know, no dress code doesn't mean show up like. Although the cloak was considered a magical artifact, it did not look like one. With some burns and rips from my fight in subspace combined with the entire thing being colored pitch black, it looked like something you could get from a vendor for less than a silver coin. You know, fashion is subjective, right? Interrupting our conversation, Irene interjected. Not when you look like that. Hearing someone break into laughter behind me, I resisted the urge to retort before finding some familiar faces ahead of us in the line. Ignoring Ruby and Irene, I walked out of the line and headed towards the front. Upon getting to the front of the line, I squeezed my way in before wrapping my hands around the shoulders of Han and Jean, who were right at the front. The two of them were wearing jeans, a collared shirt, and an oversized jacket with a logo. I could always count on them. What's up, friends? Oh hey Ren, it's you. When'd you get here? Please Han. Look in front of you. Following Jin's gaze, I saw one of the Imperial princesses, Kate, scooping some food out of one of the buffet containers only a few feet in front of us. Nudging Jin's shoulder, I said, "Oi, don't get your hopes up." Trying to comfort Jean after he was rejected by a girl was the last thing I wanted to do right now. Grabbing a plate, I ignored the stares of the tens of students I had cut in line and surveyed the food choices. Heading back to the table, I saw some familiar faces sitting alongside Zach, Kevin, Liam, Lily, and Alya. Who would have thought that? Oh wait, I did. How does luck even work? Were they originally supposed to sit somewhere else, but my luck changed that and made them sit with me? Isn't that just fate, then? Or destiny? As I halted a couple of feet away from the table, Ruby caught up and asked, "What?" "I think I'll eat on the floor today." Staring at our table, Ruby replied, "That bad, huh?" By now, Ruby should probably have heard all the rumors about my encounter with Liam at the start of school and the rumors about Lily and Ren. Out of 200 groups in the hall, just how unlucky are you? You don't want to know. Well, it's not like they'll kick me off the ship mid-banquet if I'm not with my group, right? What the hell are you guys waiting for? Oh, behind us, Irene also stared at our table with a dismayed expression. As the three of us stood in silence with our plates of food in hand, Irene made the first move as she walked toward our table. Staring down at the delicious food on my plate, I contemplated just leaving and exploring the ship until the time came, but how could I let this food go? Is it really that hard of a decision? Don't rush me. As I picked up a piece of medium-rare steak, the juices squeezing out, and put it in my mouth, my decision was made. Who cares about Liam or others? I was saving the world, too. Why can't I get a break? Strolling over to the table, I ignored the conversation going on and sat down at my seat, which was next to Ruby and across from Lily's seat. Picking up my fork, I didn't even acknowledge the others at the table and focused completely on the perfectly cooked and seasoned steak. Oh, Zach, what happened at the museum that day? I already told you, Liam, it was nothing big. We just held off some gins until the actual heroes came in. At the words, I heard a slight laugh come from my right, where Ruby sat. Got something to say? *P50*, Y said, I'm good on that, then RNL like day50 can't. Wait, no, wasn't she in the wrong? Both of us are villains, not heroes. Letting out a slight cough to cover Ruby's laughing noise, I looked up from my plate of food to immediately meet Lily's gaze. Entranced by her ocean blue eyes, I kept eye contact for a second before turning my head to Ruby, acting like nothing had happened. All right, I'm done. Paying no mind to the ongoing conversation, I got up from my seat, which made a screeching sound, and headed to the empty dance floor. By now, the Jinns should be on the cruise ship and making their way to the banquet area. However, Lily had definitely set up some kind of defense system to stop them. Well, let's see if the past 2 weeks have been for something. I needed a distraction. Neither Lily nor I knew the exact location or area where the Jinns had infiltrated, and it was impossible for Lily to defend the entirety of this gigantic ship. That would mean her plan would be on standby until she noticed something abnormal, and then, once noticing something, she would commence her plan. Reaching my hand into my cloak pocket, I felt the smooth and cold surface of a small button alongside the hilt of my daggers. Pushing my hand down further, I pressed the button, feeling it shrink down under the pressure of my hand. The sound of 3 explosions echoed throughout the ship, and the shockwaves shook the floor, causing some people to lose their balance and drop their drinks. Keeping the hand in my pocket, I glanced at my table out of the corner of my eye and saw Lily immediately reaching for her smartwatch. It wasn't just Lily though. Kevin, Alya, Liam, and even Zach were also reaching for their smartwatch. The guard in school wouldn't trust Lily if she randomly said there would be a djinn attack on the ship today, but who would? The main cast. So, to save the world, I have to go against the very beings who are destined to save the world. What a joke! Silencing everyone amidst the chaos, Liam's loud voice echoed throughout the room. Everyone evacuate immediately. Not good. How are the djinns going to take hostages if there's no one even here? Well, I wasn't completely unprepared. All I had to do was keep everyone here until the djinns appeared. Pressing further down on the button with my hand, another explosion sounded. However, this one wasn't at the bottom of the ship. The roof right above the set of double doors, which were the only exit to the banquet room, immediately collapsed. Debris, brick, and dust now covered up the exit, halting everyone who was rushing towards it. Snapping everyone out of their daze, Liam, who, after speaking to Lily for a moment, immediately announced, "Find another way out." Most people would disobey or just ignore Liam, a commoner, but in the past year, Liam has come to be known as one of the most powerful students due to being ranked highly, being part of the student council, and being friends with the main cast. With all those accomplishments and Lily, Kevin, and Alya behind him, everyone blindly followed his instructions as if he were their leader. I mean, I swear I even saw Han and Jean following his orders just now when, last night, they had been making fun of him in the group chat. It was only a matter of time until they cleared their way through the rubble, and I had no more explosives to use. Grabbing a grass-green-colored potion from my pocket, I shied away from the crowd and the watching eyes of the main cast, heading to the corner of the room. In that corner of the room stood around 5 people who were barely able to stand with the support of the wall, and they were oblivious to the situation happening around them as they continued to laugh their asses off while just staring at the wall. Seriously, getting drunk at a banquet is insane. Well, don't worry, Celestial Academy, I'll punish these delinquents for you. After taking my cloak off my shoulders, I put it on properly, causing its pitch-black color to disappear and be replaced by a blood-red color. Taking my daggers out of my pocket, I stabbed both of my hands, and instead of letting the blood fall to the ground, I pulled out my arm and let the blood fall out onto my cloak, creating a flower symbol. My previous black cloak now had various red streaks along the middle of it, and on its arms, it had a blood-colored flower symbol. If an unaffiliated random person showed up, Lily and the school's investigators would find it far too suspicious, so I would just have to demonstrate that I was related to an evil organization. Of course, it couldn't be a real evil organization as Ruby would probably know all of them, so I was basically faking being part of a non-existent organization, or technically, I was creating an evil organization. Was I finally moving up the ranks in the villain world? Could I be a second-rate villain? Nearing the corner of the banquet hall where the drunk students were stumbling about, I stamped my foot down hard on the already weakened floor, causing the drunkards who were barely holding onto the wall to lose balance and fall to the floor. Unscrewing the cap of the green-colored bottle, I held my bleeding hand above it, allowing droplets of my blood to fall into the potion. Instantly, the potion's green color transformed into a dark purple, signifying that it was ready for consumption. After delivering a swift blow to the nape of one of the drunks, rendering him unconscious, I held up his head and forcibly opened his mouth before pouring the entirety of the dark purple potion into his mouth. Dropping the empty potion bottle onto the floor, I watched it shatter into thousands of glass fragments, making it seem like another case of someone dropping a beverage due to the explosion. Stepping back, I watched the student's face quickly transform to mimic my exact face. Of course, it wasn't exact, as I had accumulated some wounds from rubble falling on me, but it was good enough to fool anyone who didn't have my enhanced eyesight. His body type was also different from mine, but I doubted that amidst all the chaos, people would take the time to examine his body type rather than just look at his face. Pulling the hood of my cloak down, completely concealing my face, I wasted no time as I took out my daggers and watched them light up with a night-black aura from the corruption of the night. Unfortunately, Today wasn't going to be an aura farming session. Swinging my daggers at the air, I sent 3 small elemental slashes right at every chandelier and light source in the room. The once fully lit up room was now enveloped in darkness, only small parts of the room visible due to the moon shining through the windows. Jumping from table to table silently, I reached the pile of rubble blocking the exit, where tens of students were already doing their best to clear it with their bare hands. As it was a banquet, no one brought any weapons or swords. Well, the main cast did, probably due to Lily's warning about the attack. Seeing the students run into chaos due to the sudden darkness and Lily talking with Liam, Kevin, and Alya, I wasted no time as I sent a night black elemental slash right at the students, clearing the rubble. The room, now illuminated by my elemental slash, displayed a scene of 10 students standing weaponless and frightened in front of a flying slash that seemed as dark as the night sky hurling toward them. Lily, now what? The lights went off. I'm not sure. Keep trying to find an X dash. Instantly capturing the attention of the 4 main cast members, an elemental slash flew through the room, illuminating its target of the 10 innocent students. Even though not a single word was said, the 4 immediately sprang into action as Lily pulled out her wand, casting a current of wind that instantly propelled Kevin and Liam toward the slash. Alya pulled out her ice-covered sword and immediately created a barrier of ice between the helpless students and the elemental slash. Finally, Liam and Kevin, who were flying right at the elemental slash, had their swords in hand and faced the slash directly. Confronted by the 2 swords, the elemental slash got sent right back to where it came from, hitting a wall near the corner of the room. Desperate and on edge, Liam screamed out, "We need light!" Instantly, a red inferno of fire appeared in the hands of Irene, who was sitting awestruck at the table beside Ruby and Zach. Unlike Lily's group, these 3 had no idea that the attack was going to happen. If only they had someone like Lily in their group. Now, being able to see everything once again, Liam regrouped with everyone at the original table. Unbeknownst to them, there was one issue. There was a slight difference between magical fire and natural fire. While natural fires are technically light sources as they result from combustion chemical reactions, magical fires do not constitute being a light source as they are created from mana. Looking at Irene, Ruby, and Zach's confused expressions, Lily started off by explaining the situation. "Look, we're being attacked by a group of djinns who plan to take us hostage to blackmail the academy. I can't say much now as we're low on time, but that's the situation." Looking at the 3 nodding their heads, Lily paused for a second before continuing. "However, there's a problem right now. One of these djinns or another enemy is in this room right now." Confused, Zach asked, "Wait, how do you know that one of them is W-?" Kevin, who had been silent up till now, angrily responded, "You idiot, where the hell do you think that elemental slash came from?" Interrupting them was Liam, who was in a state of panic after staring at the already injured students from the explosions earlier. "Ignore them. What do we do now, Lily?" Pausing for a moment, Lily glanced around the table before asking, "Has anyone seen Ren?" "Yeah, I did." Expanding the fire in her hand, Irene lit up more of the room and then pointed to the corner where an unconscious Ren lay on the floor beside a couple of other people. "It's kinda his thing to run away when anything remotely dangerous happens." Kevin, is now the time to laugh? "My bad, dude, but honestly, just look at H-. Enough. Our primary goal remains the same. Get out of the banquet hall. It's only a matter of time before more djinns come, and then they take us hostage." Nodding at Lily's words, Liam stood on the table and loudly announced, capturing everyone's attention, "We need to get out of here." Picking up the utensil knives from the table, the remaining group of students walked towards the exit alongside Lily's group. Alya, who had been silent due to the severity of the situation, picked up her sword and manifested 5 icicle spears above her head. Not skipping the beat, the icicles immediately hurled towards the pile of rubble. However, before the ice could reach the rubble, another night black elemental slash intersected it. The elemental reaction caused by the ice and darkness hitting each other generated a gray fog that enveloped part of the room. "Lily, he's over here." Alya was smart. She knew that she wouldn't be able to destroy the rubble without any interference. She actually wanted the interference so that she could find the location of the intruder. Lily, who was waiting for Alya's signal, cast 2 wind tornadoes, but she stopped right in her tracks mid-cast. The icicles that Alya had created were now flying right back at her, seemingly having a mind of their own. Alya had no idea, as she was looking straight at Lily. Changing the direction of her attack, Lily sent the tornadoes right at the returning ice spear and screamed, "Alya, move." Hearing Lily's urgency, Alya immediately dove to the right, narrowly evading the wind tornado. Looking back, Alya's confusion only intensified as she saw her own icicle spears attacking her while Lily's tornadoes held them off. As another bout of smoke appeared from the elemental reaction between the tornado and the ice, Liam, Zach, and Irene joined them outside the smoke area. "What's going on?" "Liam, the intruder is preventing us from leaving." "All right, I'll take care of him, you go dash." Pausing mid-sentence, Liam noticed no one was paying attention to him. He followed the other's gaze and saw a figure emerging from the smoke. Clad in a mix of blood red and pitch black colors, a figure emerged from the smoke with 2 ominous dark shapes in his hands. They couldn't even be identified as weapons. They were just roughly the shape of something covered by a black aura. Before anyone could say anything, the figure swung the 2 ominous shapes at them, releasing an elemental slash that was as dark as a black hole right at all 5 of them. "Duck." At Lily's words, the 6 students dove toward the ground, narrowly avoiding the slash as it whizzed right above their heads. Glancing ahead, Lily looked at where the cloaked figure had been previously, but he was no longer there. In fact, he wasn't anywhere in their sight. He had disappeared right back into the smoke. Snapping Lily out of her thoughts, Liam spoke up with his sword aimed towards the smoke. "It's just one of them. Even if it's just one, we have to get to the exit and defeat him while he just has to stop us from clearing out the exit." Nodding at Alya's words, Lily regrouped with others, her wand ready to cast a spell at any moment. "We need to do something about that smoke." "Oh, good fucking insight, Captain Obvious. What? Are you going to tell us we need to escape this room next?" "Kevin and Liam, is this really the time?" Irene, standing at the edge of the group with the fire still burning in her hand, considered using her fire to burn away the smoke but dismissed it because it could backfire and add more smoke. Yet again, she was useless. Interrupting the silence, Alya asked, "Lily, why don't you use water to dilute the smoke and make it slowly disappear? That could work, but the time it would take. Why don't we just go into the smoke and take him out? It's a 6v1. I think we might actually agree on something, Liam." "Am I dreaming?" "Shut it, Mon." Lily turned to Alya, Zach, and Irene, who nodded their heads at Liam's suggestion. Why did they need to devise a complicated plan? It was 6 main cast members against some random third-rate villain. Recalling the earlier scene where Alya's icicles came flying back at her, Lily nodded her head before saying, "All right, but be careful of your own spells as well as his." "Yeah, don't worry about it, Lily. I'll take care of that random for you." "Yo, Kevin, do you even think before you speak? Like, are you really flirting right now? This might actually be a dream." Big talk from someone who's never spoken to a girl. "Yo, are you fucking stuck dash? Time and place you too." At this point, Lily felt like a chaperone on a kindergarten field trip. Was she really entrusting the fate of the world to these 2? As the 6 of them got ready to charge into the smoke, Zach pulled out his hand and placed it in the center of their huddle. "T-Team Celestial Academy on 3. 3, 2. Yo, shut the hell up, will you?" This time, Lily didn't even intervene at Kevin's ill-tempered words. While Liam, Kevin, and Zach directly charged into the smoke with their weapons pointed forward, Lily, Alya, and Irene stood at the edge with their wands shining, indicating that their spells were ready to be cast. Inside the smoke, Zach, having lost sight of both Liam and Kevin, swung around his axe, temporarily clearing the smoke before it immediately regrouped. The villain couldn't have planned the smoke, as Alya spontaneously decided to send the icicles. That meant if Zach couldn't see, the enemy couldn't either. Thus, Zach didn't feel any need to be prepared while walking around. His main goal was to locate the villain and relay his location to the 3 girls, who were waiting with their spells ready outside the smoke. Swinging his battle axe once again, Zack cleared the smoke in front of him. Through that gap he cleared, he could see a pitch-black elemental slash charging towards him. Then, next second, the gap closed, and the smoke regrouped, hiding Zack's vision of elemental slash. Blindly diving to the right, Zack felt something bang against his chest and looked downwards, seeing that he was now lying flat on a table. Having the wind knocked out of him due to the diving on the table, Zack struggled to get up until, finally, he was able to sit upright on the top of the table. Looking forward, Zack saw something variation in the gray fog. A pitch-black color was spreading and replacing the gray color of the fog. The black color was spreading quickly towards the area where Zack was sitting down. Before Zack could react or dodge, he heard a voice speaking directly into his ears. "Have a good dream." With a soft chop on the nape of Zack's neck, he fell unconscious, his body sprawled out across the half-broken table. Somewhere else in the large fog, Liam and Kevin were walking side by side, searching for the cloaked figure. "Why the hell are you following me? Is your ego so big that you trick yourself into believing the lies you make, Kevin? Aren't you a delusional one? You're quite literally following me right now. Can you put aside your ego for one fucking second? Do you really want to split up in this gigantic smoke? Why would we let the villain fight us one by one instead of just fighting him together? Tisk, you really are delusional. Didn't you leave behind Zack? I lost track of him in the fog, so I followed you. Is that all of your questions? Do you want to know my favorite colors and hobbies now? Look, a dash. Oh no, Kevin, maybe you want to know my favorite dish? My fave dash. Look ahead of you." Sensing the urgency in Kevin's voice, Liam looked forward and saw smoke suddenly parting, revealing the cloaked figure only a few steps in front of them. Here, instantly, dozens of icicles, fireballs, and wind bullets flew towards the three of them, causing the smoke to further disperse. Combined with the fact that Lily had been slowly diluting the smoke with water magic, the smoke was on its last legs, as you could actually see through parts of it now. As the spells neared the figure of the defenseless villain, who couldn't even dodge as Kevin and Liam were surrounding him, a smile appeared on Liam's face. A moment later, that smile disappeared. The villain was gone. He had disappeared. The spells meant for the villain hit the wall behind him, causing further damage to the room. As a result, more rubble fell from the roof, further blocking the exit route. "Be careful." Hearing Lily's scream behind him, Liam snapped out of his confusion and disbelief before surveying his surroundings. The smoke was now gone, or in other words, the villain had nowhere to hide. After looking around the room a moment, Liam was about to walk to the other side of the room to search when a sudden shriek echoed from behind him. "Hell dash!" Instantly, Liam turned around to see a masked figure standing right behind Irene with his hand wrapped around her mouth. Before Liam could even react, Lily was already on the move. She summoned a portal that immediately flung out an endless amount of water right at the villain. However, it was too late. Irene's body fell onto the floor, and most importantly, the fires dancing on Irene's palm disappeared, returning the room to complete darkness. The moonlight shone through the windows, illuminating the villain standing over Irene's body, still holding the odd pitch-black shapes. Facing the water beam directly, the villain held his daggers up to the water, slightly faltering and being pushed back by the pressure of the water. Recovering from their shock, the other three immediately made their moves as Liam and Kevin charged toward the villain while Alya summoned a lance made out of pure ice and hurled it at the villain. However, the villain remained in front of the water beam, not making any attempts to dodge or move. Then, the water beam halted. Lily watched in confusion as the source of the water beam, the portal, moved without her permission and flung towards the villain. Now with the portal floating right above the villain's head, the water beam flowed out of the portal once again, this time heading straight for the charging Kevin and Liam. Surprised by the sudden twist, the two barely managed to dodge as the water beam grazed Kevin's clothes, immediately causing him to become drenched. As the portal changed directions and hit the ice lance, instantly shattering it into hundreds of pieces, Liam and Kevin scrambled to regroup with Lily, who was standing in front of one of the windows. A moment later, the portal entirely disappeared, and the villain, who was no longer illuminated by the moonlight, was nowhere to be seen. Lily, what the hell was T dash? No time for questions, Liam, there's been a change of plans. Gesturing towards the window beside her, Lily said. There's another way to leave. Considering the option for the moment, Alya asked. How are we going to get everyone out of here? Zach, Irene, and the others. Sure, we can make it out, but not them. Welp guys, we've tried our best. I think it is T dash. Shut it, Kevin, and listen to her. Seeing Liam gesture to her, Lily opened the window and continued. Look down. On the surface of the ocean below the window stood 3 normal-sized ships, each equipped with various cannons. How? I thought you didn't tell anyone E dash. Look closely, Liam. Upon closer inspection, Liam realized that each boat was plastered with elven royal family symbols, and the boat's flag was the image of the world tree. Is this your backup plan? As Alya and Lily nodded their heads, Kevin angrily exclaimed, Why didn't you tell us? Would you really have stalled to the best of your abilities if you knew it was all a diversion? Having no response to Lily's question, Kevin muttered something under his breath before turning to Liam, who responded, Does it even matter anymore? Let's get going. While Alya and Lily went to the bodies of the 2 fallen main cast members, Liam gathered the students and guided them through the darkness towards the open window. Beside Liam stood Kevin, who had his sword equipped and ready for any attack that could come. However, there was no attack. The 4 of them gathered all of the students, even the drunken and unconscious ones, at the open window. Isn't something off? Liam's right, Lily. The villain can't just be letting us go. Maybe he got scared of my almightiness and ran off. Kevin, I don't think you even got close to him for more than a second. Maintaining a calm composure, Lily simply pulled out her wand and turned to the others. Get ready. In her mind, there was only one reason why the villain would stop attacking. Reinforcements had arrived for him. The ground shook and the roof above the food area collapsed, causing more rubble to fall and block the original exit. After all the dust was cleared out, the image of 5 jinns, each with a set of red horns and long swords, could be seen standing on the remnants of the roof. Stepping forward, the leader of the jinns wore a grin while speaking. Well, what do we have here? Are our little pups trying to escape? Her sparkling red horns lit up the dark room, illuminating the main cast alongside Ruby and others standing near the open window. Dropping a ladder out of the open window and down to the boat, Alya said. We need more time. Unfortunately, we can't let you have that. You have my dearest condolences. With those words, a blood-red aura enveloped all of the jinns before materializing in the form of tens of sharp red discs. Time seemed to slow for Liam as dozens of blood-red discs surged towards them, each of the discs capable of killing more than 3 people. With his sword, Liam was only capable of defending against 1 or, at best, 2 discs, so what were we supposed to do against dozens of them? Defend. Stepping forward, Alya cast an ice barrier right in front of the incoming discs while Lily created a shield of water right behind the ice barrier to slow the disc speed. As the discs pierced the ice barrier and raced through the water shield, Liam and Kevin stood in front of the group, their swords pointed at the remaining 7 discs. Holding their swords horizontally, Kevin and Liam each took on 3 discs while leaving the last one for Lily and Alya, who were helping get people down the ladder and onto the ships below. After being pushed back by the discs and into the wall, Liam and Kevin managed to redirect the discs to a nearby wall, away from their fellow students. However, despite his attack being completely foiled, Jin's expression didn't change a single bit. Instead, he raised his hand again. The horns of the jinns behind him began glowing a dark red as 12 more discs manifested above their heads. Usually I would just get it over with, but now I feel like playing with my prey. Who's gonna save you out here in the middle of the ocean? We have all the time in the world. Ah, those expressions of yours. Can't wait to see them again in 10 minutes. Alongside the discs, chains broke through the floor beneath the jinns and surged toward the 4 main cast members, preventing them from blocking the discs. What do we do? I don't know. Lily couldn't even plan for this scenario. In the book, all that was mentioned was Liam gaining a power-up and defeating the powerful jinns, so she couldn't have predicted their attacks or movements. Turning to Liam, with her hands clenched in desperation, Lily said, Do something, Liam. After a moment of silence, Kevin exclaimed, "You're putting our lives in this idiot's hands, Lily?" Even Alya seemed concerned by Lily's words as she replied, "Lily, maybe we should take our loss and leave?" Asterisk. Even Ren, who was hiding in the shadows, couldn't help but laugh at Lily's outrageous words. Of course, Ren was just laughing rather than doing something because he knew those outrageous lines would actually work, as Liam now had achieved the perfect conditions to obtain his power-up. They and the students were at risk of dying or being kidnapped, the jinns were here attacking them, and finally, there was an escape route present. Those were the three conditions that needed to be fulfilled. Try. We can't just leave these students behind. If we wanted to survive in the first place, we would have never gotten on the cruise ship. Why did we even come to the banquet in the first place? What was this planning and effort for if we just left now? All four of us wanted to save these people, that was our goal at the start, and it still is. After giving a solemn nod to Lily and a quick wave to Alya, Liam turned around and punched Kevin as hard as he could in the chest. "What the hell, Dash? Always wanted to do that before I died." Leaning down, Liam patted both Zach and Irene's unconscious bodies before pulling out his sword and facing the incoming chains. Made of pure blood, the chains were dark red instead of metallic gray, and they showed no mercy as they rampaged through the tables and chairs in the room to reach Liam. The fact that the chain was able to pierce through the tough wood of the table without even slowing down said enough. One hit and that chain would pierce right through Liam's body. Staring down the incoming chains, Liam laughed for a moment before saying to himself, "Didn't this already happen once?" Yes, at the amusement park, Liam had faced this exact same ordeal and made it out alive, albeit with some luck. He had survived last time, so why wouldn't he this time? As the chains neared Liam's figure, he briefly turned around and saw Alya alongside Lily, sending the hostages down the ladder with grim expressions. There was also Kevin, but he was just giving Liam the middle finger while clutching the lower half of his body with a pained expression. Is the last thing I see really going to be that bastard? I'll be damned. At least he wasn't dying for nothing. Born an outskirt rat to a poor family, Liam was very familiar with the concept of selfishness. In fact, it was his whole ideology. Stealing from vendors to get food, fighting other beggars to receive money from civilians, and even attacking other rats who dared to enter your territory. Growing up, Liam was forced to endure and adapt to these conditions. Beg, steal. Beg, steal. Beg, steal. An endless loop with one goal. It was all to survive. That was all that mattered to Liam. No matter how many terrible actions or crimes Liam committed, he never felt bad. Whether it was robbing a fellow beggar for money or stealing bread from a market stand on the fringe of collapsing, Liam always walked away with the same indifferent expression. Why should he care? None of it was his fault, was it? Was it his fault he was born on the outskirts? Was it his fault that he was born to a poor family? If all he was doing was adapting to his environment, why should he be blamed? All that mattered was him and only him. Who would have thought I'd be here? From stealing and attacking to sacrificing myself for others with no regrets, even in the face of death. The old Liam would have been long gone as soon as the news of the jinn's attack reached his ears, yet the new current Liam was here, protecting them at the cost of his life. What was the cause of this transformation? Recalling his backstory, Liam let out a chuckle before saying, "PFFT when I die, they better create a play about me and my life." Wait, who would be the villain? Kevin? No? Oh, that Ren guy would be perfect. Remembering the time when he had been caught off guard and beaten by his jealous classmate, Kevin sighed. The weeks of anxious anticipation of the jealous boy's revenge had been too much for him. I really wasted a week biting my nails waiting for his revenge. If I knew I was going to die this soon, I would have just beaten him up and gotten it over. Who says you're going to die? What the hell? In front of Liam appeared a system menu, all too familiar to the one that portrayed the stats menu. Blocking Liam's view of the incoming chains, the blue system screen disappeared before reappearing with a different message. Embrace it, hero. The one destined to save it all. Not giving Liam any time to react, he felt his entire body overflowing with power, his trembling legs had stabilized, his sword had grown 10 times lighter, and he felt something weird whenever he moved his hands. An unknown presence in his body. Well, it can't get any worse than this. Like how he used mana, Liam gathered the unknown presence in his body, leading it towards his chest. There was far too much of whatever substance it was to stay in another part of his body. As the last particle entered the square that his substance formed in his chest, Liam suddenly felt a flashing light blind his eyes. Reopening his eyes, Liam saw that the system menu had disappeared, instead replaced by his sword, which was now shining a light blue. The blue aura engulfed his sword, illuminating the dark room to the point that most people would have thought it was daytime outside. He seemed to have absorbed all of the unknown substance in his body. As the first set of chains pierced right toward Liam, he charged forward with his now blue sword, ready to intercept it. Putting all his strength into his sword's slash onto the chain, Liam was surprised when his sword simply passed through the chains like a knife cutting butter. Falling onto the ground due to the strength he had put into his sword slash, he watched as the entire chain disappeared despite him only hitting one small portion of it. Magic nullification. Standing back up, Liam did the same thing for each of the discs as his sword effortlessly cut through them like butter, causing the discs to shatter into thousands of pieces before disappearing into thin air. Ignoring the djinn's surprised and dreaded expression, Liam swung his sword in the air, releasing all of the unknown substance he could muster. A light blue elemental slash charged right at the group of djinns. With no time to dodge, the djinns watched their lights both literally and mentally flash before their eyes as the elemental slash neared them. After the slash cut right through the djinns, it continued charging forward, even cutting through the cruise ship's walls before flying out into the ocean and out of sight. Well, goodbye to you too, sword slash. Not giving any explanation to the astounded Kevin, Lily, and Alya, Liam walked up beside them before carrying out the rest of the people, who were unable to witness the event due to fainting from fear or the rubble that fell on them. In the other corner of the room, Ruby, who was completely oblivious to other events, stared at one body that seemed to be unconscious. Holding their head up, Ruby swept her hands across the boy's cheeks, but upon feeling the prickling sensation of their skin, she immediately dropped the head onto the hard floor. That's not him. Channeling her eyesight to confirm her suspicions, Ruby peered deep into the individual lying on the floor's desires. The desire is as strong, but unless he became an alcoholic in a single day, it's not him. Carrying the unconscious Ren in her hands, Ruby walked towards the window where Liam and Lily were carrying the last few people down the ladder and onto the ship. Upon seeing Ruby holding Ren, Liam resisted the urge to take some kind of revenge and scoffed. "Tisk, look at this guy." Warning him, Lily put the last person in her arms and began climbing down the ladder. "Liam, don't do anything else right now." After sending the last elemental slash, Liam almost collapsed on the floor due to exhaustion, but after getting up, he still insisted on helping the people down the ladder despite the fact that his legs were trembling from just standing up. Of course, Kevin had bombarded Liam with questions about his light blue sword of light, but with Alya's guidance, Kevin had been forced to postpone his questions and head down the ladder with Alya, Irene, and Zach. Besides a few injuries from the initial explosions and the purple discs, the students were all fine, so Lily sighed in relief. She was now 1-1 in victories, disregarding the incident that took place before the plot started. While Lily hadn't necessarily planned for Liam to achieve his power-up during this incident, as she believed that he could acquire it any time after, she was still fine with this outcome. Letting his curiosity get to her, Lily asked, "What did it feel like?" She already knew the name of his power-up and the reason why he got it, but she was still curious about how it would feel to wield a sword that dazzling. "I felt like I could do anything. Every step I took was exhausting but exhilarating at the same time. Felt like I was on top of the world, but every second that passed, I felt like I was being pulled further down to the bottom." Nodding her head, she watched Liam climb onto the ladder behind her and then Ruby, who had been silent this entire time. Although she was suspicious of Ruby at the start due to her sudden transfer, Zach had been vouching for her ever since the trip started, so she wasn't majorly concerned anymore. During this incident, she hadn't done anything special and acted like a normal student who was scared by the djinns. However, when Lily saw her with Ren's body, more suspicion began to rise. "I'll have to keep an eye on her." The two variables in the book, Ruby and Ren, were sticking together? There had to be something odd going on there. Standing unnoticed in the shadows right next to the window, I let out a sigh as I watched Ruby, the last person, begin to climb down the ladder, leaving the room completely empty. Wasting no time, I sprinted towards the severed Jinn bodies before grabbing all their items and searching for valuables. Was the hero cast stupid? Leaving behind this vault of treasures for the investigators? I'll be damned. Going through jacket pockets and taking necklaces, I took everything without even testing to see if they were useful to me or not. Even if they weren't useful to me, one man's trash is another's treasure. The amount of money I had collected during this trip was insane. Business was booming, but I needed a plausible way to explain all the wealth to Raven. If I didn't, he would side-eye me and pretend to shiver every time he saw me for at least a week. Wasn't the previous owner of the black market supposed to be a bit tougher and scarier? Picking up the last few necklaces, I put them inside my huge cloak pockets before taking off my cloak and wiping the blood stains on it. Taking some water and tissues from the broken-down food area, I wiped and wiped until every last bit of blood from the cloak was gone, reverting it to its normal pitch-black color. Folding the cloak, I tied it around my waist, ensuring that nothing fell out, before walking back towards the open window. Looking down the window, I saw Ruby, Liam, and Lily still slowly descending the ladder with the bodies of their students. The ship was at the very bottom of the ladder, waiting for them. Although I had been surprised by Lily's choice to use ships instead of a helicopter or something that could fly, I wasn't complaining about riding home on luxury speedboats. Due to the current situation with the world tree being corrupted, all the elven heroes would have been stuck in the elven realm, so these ships were probably all the elven kingdom could send to help Lily and Alya out. Tensing my legs, I smiled as I jumped out of the window and down to the ship, which was more than a 100-foot drop. Falling down, I felt the air rush onto my face, refreshing me from that long battle earlier. In the pitch darkness of the night, no one even noticed my falling figure. Landing silently on top of one of the speed ships, I hid in the darkness of night, waiting for Ruby, who, for some reason, was holding the body I disguised to be me. This was going to be a lot harder than I expected. As Ruby got onto the speedboat, she began to walk to the storage room where the rest of the students were stored. Lily handed the body in her arms to Ruby and headed to the top of the speed ship, where Liam, Kevin, and Alya were waiting with the bodies of Irene and Zach. Jumping from the top of the speed ship to the ladder, I quietly climbed down the ladder before following Ruby to the storage room. Hiding in the shadows behind her, I closed in on her as she neared the storage room and then hid in her own shadow. When she opened the door to the room, I slipped in right behind her, completely unnoticed. Watching her lay down the fake Ren's body, I saw her kneel down and touch his cheek again before walking out of the storage room. Does she know? Surely not. As the door slammed shut behind her, I moved out of the shadows before unwrapping the wound on my hands and letting my blood drip down on the fake Ren's face. Seeing his face transform out of mine and to his, I moved his body out of the way and prepared to lie down on the floor when suddenly a noise interrupted me. Slowly looking upwards, I saw Ruby standing at the wide-open door, staring at my face with a grin apparent on her face. It was all a trick. She already knew the person wasn't Ren. But did she know I was the cloaked figure fighting against them in the room? Scratching my head, I reciprocated her smile and said, "I just woke up, the alcohol really got to me." "Really still going with that? You're actually shameless?" "I'm a third-rate villain. Isn't my entire life and existence meant to be shameless?" Putting my hands on my back, I reapplied the bandages to my hands and slipped my sleeves over them so they were invisible. "Well, I guess you learn something new every day. Still, shouldn't you know about my shamelessness?" "I'm quite disappointed." Walking towards me without any concern for the bodies she was stepping on to get to me, Ruby said, "Don't get it twisted, I knew you were shameless, but not that shameless. What the hell is going on? Does she know the cloaked figure was me or not?" Quelling the chaotic thoughts in my head, I maintained my smile and asked, "What exactly do you mean by that?" "I'm quite offended." Ignoring my question like usual, Ruby reached me and looked up into my eyes before saying, "We're on a luxury speedboat, Yet we're here rotting away in the storage room. Exactly my thoughts. But are we just going to brush over my question? Alright then. Feeling a sudden light blind my eyes, I involuntarily closed my eyes. But when I reopened them, the chaotic wind of the night immediately rushed into my face. We were no longer in the storage room. We were at the top of the ship, where I had been earlier. Looking down, I could see the 4 main cast members talking seriously, and below them, the waves of the night blue ocean water crashing against our boat. So, she already had access to it, but how much access? The Ruby Gemstones Order's specialty, spatial magic. Even with Liam's new power-up, if Ruby had this access to spatial magic, she could probably kill Liam or at least injure him before backup arrived. Looking at my expression with a disappointed face, Ruby said, "You know most people are surprised when something like this happens?" Shrugging my shoulders, I replied, "Do I look like most people?" "You're right. You're way too shameless and stupid to be considered normal." "Not what I meant, but all right." Chuckling at my sarcastic words, Ruby put her hands on the railing of the boat and stared at the land, which was getting nearer and nearer to us. You know, for a school known as the best in the world, there are quite a lot of problems. Looking down at Liam, the reason for all the Academy's problems, I responded. Yeah, like a major villain boss infiltrating the Academy. Imagine if that happened, that would be a huge problem. *PFFT*, or if an Academy student that harassed girls on the daily ran away to save themselves when djinns were attacking other civilians. Really needed to add that harassing girls part, huh? Just wouldn't be right if I didn't. Using my enhanced eyesight, I peered into the distance and saw on the land that plenty of heroes and Academy supervisors, having heard about the situation, were already waiting for us. Really? That stereotype about the security always arriving late is pissing me off. Isn't the author overusing it at this point? How did this author, out of thousands, get his book turned into a real world? Well, that's assuming that the other books are normal and don't have people getting transmigrated into them. Looking at my sour expression, Ruby followed my gaze before asking, "Scared of your father?" Confused, I looked further into the incoming land, and sure enough, there was my father waiting with a sword in his hand. Shaking my head at Ruby's question, I replied, "Not really." It was true. Back at the award ceremony, it was my first time seeing him as Ren, so all his explosions just exploded outwards. Now that it was the second time, I could stop the leakage of emotions as I was more accustomed to it. Of course, my anger at him for being a terrible human being was still there, but I could keep that under control, partially because I knew I couldn't do shit about it right now. What was more important at this moment was how Ruby knew so much about me. From recognizing my face back in the cave from a simple glance to even knowing the backstory about my father disowning me, she had to have met me before. Most of Ren's childhood memories were fragmented, so I couldn't recall ever seeing or meeting someone similar to Ruby. I also couldn't ask Ruby about anything as she would immediately realize that I wasn't the real Ren for not remembering, in the case I had met her before. After my response, the mood turned somber as the two stared at the land without saying anything. As the ship approached the land, I got ready to leave. As if I was going to help the main cast carry all the students out of the storage room and onto the land. Seeing me ready to jump off the boat, Ruby cracked a grin before asking, "You ask me why I call you shameless? A third-rate villain must embrace that shamelessness to advance to a second-rate villain. Or something like that. Honestly, I just needed to give myself an excuse to leave. You act like that, but you're doing the same thing." Turning to Ruby, who was also on the ledge of the boat, ready to jump, I reciprocated her smile before waving and jumping. However, Ruby was shocked not because I was jumping though. It was because of where I was jumping. Into the deep blue water. Embracing the cold ocean water, I sunk to the ocean floor before swimming towards the land like a mermaid. I was actually swimming faster than the speedboat. As I turned around to see how fast I was moving compared to the speedboat, I peered past the darkness of the water and saw a figure also in the water. No fucking way. Right next to the speedboat was Ruby, who struggled to stay afloat while wildly slashing her arms to stay above the surface of the water. Doesn't she have teleportation? I guess water is spatial magic's weakness? Swimming back towards the speedboat, I swam right next to Ruby and floated above the water effortlessly before saying, "Are you actually stupid? Oh, so when you do it, it's alright, but when I do, I'm stupid? You know, maybe it's a stupid idea for you because you can't swim. Details, details, who cares? Well, I can't just leave here to drown or get run over by the speedboat, can I?" Turning to Ruby, who was desperately flailing her arms and legs to sway afloat, I asked, "So, what's your plan now?" Stopping her flailing arms and legs, she grinned and asked, "I don't know, maybe catch a ride?" Then, a second later, she started to sink into the water as she stopped flailing. Diving into the water below Ruby, underwater, I gestured to my back, and without any hesitation, she threw her arms out and attached her hands to my drenched shirt. Even though I knew she couldn't hear, I said, "Hold on tight." Boosting myself off the ocean floor, I swam using breaststroke as fast as I could toward the land, which became closer and closer with every second. Turning away mid-stroke, I saw Ruby trailing behind me, holding on with all her might to my shirt, which was already almost torn due to her tight grip. Why do all my clothes always get torn? Reaching the shallow area of the water, I stood up with my shoulders barely above the surface and walked towards the sand, only a few feet away. On the other hand, Ruby only had her head above the water as she struggled to walk due to the resistance of the water. As soon as we reached the sand of the beach we swam towards, Ruby collapsed on the ground panting. Why you a damn mermaid?" Shrugging my shoulders, I crouched beside her and stared at the speedboat, which had already reached the port that was only a couple of miles away from the beach we were on. "Well, we should get back to the hotel. D'ye go like this?" Staring down at my drenched suit, which did not make me uncomfortable or irritated in the slightest, and Ruby's dress, which had sand all over it, I grabbed the cloak tied around my waist and handed it to her. Since the sun was just rising, the cloak shouldn't have any effects, so she wouldn't realize it was a magical artifact, and I could just take it back once we reached our dorm room. Watching her put on my cloak, which was far too big for her as the bottom of it scraped against the ground, I suppressed the urge to laugh, but failed. She looked like she just came from the circus. Asterisk. Something funny to you? Enlighten me as to what's so funny. Asterisk pfv asterisk I, and nothing at all. Stepping in front of me, she blocked my path and held out her hands horizontally, causing me to laugh even more. Her sleeves were so big you couldn't even see her hands. Upon reaching our hotel room, I promptly took back my cloak and put it in my luggage before showering and changing. Stepping out of the shower, I noticed that the room was mostly empty. Zach and Irene were probably in the hospital being treated like the others, leaving me the entire living room. Tomorrow we would be heading back on the buses, so I crammed everything into my suitcase and even used my awakened strength, almost breaking the suitcase, to zip everything up. Wrapping a towel around my neck, I sat on one of the cushions near the table and drank a cup of green tea that Ruby had made because she was cold from the swim. Scrolling on my smartwatch, enjoying the sweet tea, relishing the view of the ocean from our room, and recalling the earlier swim made me realize something. Was it so bad to live a normal life here? When I first came to this world, I was so confident that living here would be hell and so determined to head back to Earth, but now, here I was, enjoying the simple things in a student's daily life. I had always denied that I was enjoying my life here, but at this point, it was hard for me not to have fun. Just messing around with Zach and Ruby, hanging out with Jean and Han, and even just training against the AI bots brought me happiness and solace. Things I would never be able to do if I went back to Earth. Guess it's true you only miss things when you realize that you can no longer have them. What if I never even got back to Earth? That thought had crossed my mind many times, but I had always denied it as if I was transported to this world. There must be a way to travel to other worlds, but I just hadn't found it yet. Of course, in the meantime before discovering the method, I had decided to do my best to save this world from destruction by maintaining the plot structure. But, was this life really so bad? With the prestige of the academy and the money from Raven's business, I could live comfortably after graduation, maybe move to the countryside, and buy a mansion. Wasn't that better than working a 9-to-5 job on Earth? Wasn't living comfortably in a mansion with no worries way better than waking up at 6 a.m. every day just to be yelled out by my future boss? Why was I so persistent in making my way back to Earth? Interrupting my thoughts, Ruby opened the door of her and Irene's room before strolling into the living room and taking a seat on the cushion across from me. Staring at me with a curious expression, she asked, "How's the green tea? Could be better." "Are you insane?" I made tea dash. Alright, it's good." Lifting up the cup of tea to my mouth to prove my point, I tilted the cup towards my mouth, letting the gold liquid flow into my mouth. However, when I attempted to put down the cup, I couldn't. Ruby was holding the cup to my mouth with a grin on her face. Hot, hot, hot. Overpowering Ruby, I put the cup down, but the damage was already done. With my tongue burning in pain, I rushed to the bathroom sink and covered my tongue in water, but that just made it worse. Further adding to my situation, I could hear someone breaking down in laughter back in the living room. With my tongue still writhing in pain, I rushed back to the living room, grabbed Ruby's cup of tea, and raised it to her mouth. However, Ruby teleported back 5 meters away from me and ran for her room before frantically shutting and locking the sliding door. While washing my tongue in the sink for the next hour, I could hear the constant bangs against the door and laughter from the other room. When I woke the next day, I didn't even bother to eat breakfast, as the tea had burned all my taste buds off. Everything was tasteless. While glaring at Ruby, who was comfortably gathering food, I also saw Irene and Zach, who were completely healed, walking towards the table. Sitting down next to me, Zach exclaimed, "Last day, guys, I'll really me dash." "Don't lie, Zach, you won't, Miss Wren." "Wait, really, I will, IAC dash." "Shut it, please." After I silenced Zach, Ruby also sat down beside us before saying, "Zach, don't listen to him. Wren can put up with you for one more day. Isn't that right, Wren?" Ignoring Ruby, I got up from the table and headed to the luxury bus outside that had just arrived. Entering the luxury bus, I made my way through the empty seats and to my section, where an exquisite gift basket full of various expensive candies, chips, and beverages sat, with an attachment that said, "From the Museum of Magical Artifacts." My taste buds. Even though I had technically done no work to prevent the museum from being robbed on the outside, I had literally defended their subspace from being robbed by the jinns and taken care of 11 of them. Of course, I had stolen the subspace instead, but who would you rather have stolen from you? A bunch of jinns with evil ulterior motives or an innocent student like me? Surely, I was entitled to have part of this gift basket. Would Irene really let me take anything in the gift basket? Imagining Irene slapping away my hands every time I attempted to reach for a snack, I realized that there was no way in hell she would let me within a 10-meter radius of the gift basket. Well, if there was a gift basket to begin with, grabbing the gift basket from our section, I put it between my arms and strolled to the bus's exit like nothing had ever happened. You know, even though it was my choice to work in the shadows where no one would notice me, some recognition was nice. Walking down the bus stairs, I noticed Alya at the entrance alone, blocking my exit route. In the awkward situation where one had to move first, I decided to be the rude one as I started walking down the bus stairs, forcing Alya to move out of the way. No matter how much I concealed the gift basket, the vibrant colors of the candy stood out, so Alya inevitably saw it as I descended down the stairs. Seeing the handwritten note on the gift basket, Alya turned and stared at me. Even though I didn't have to say anything, I felt compelled to give an excuse as her gaze locked onto me. "I'm going to share it with the others. If you're innocent, you have nothing to hide." I think she might be worse than Ruby? What does that even mean? Ignoring her, I exited the bus and was going to walk to the luggage compartment to store the gift basket, but Alya just stood there outside the bus, staring at me. Then, as I slowly walked towards the cafeteria, glancing behind me to see if Alya was still watching, the worst possible thing happened. Ruby walked out of the hotel doors, stared at me for a moment, adjusted her gaze to the large gift basket hidden between my arms, and grinned before asking me, "Oh, and what might that be, Wren?" Employing my overly sarcastic tone, I replied, "Oh, you'll never believe it. The museum we saved earlier kindly decided to gift us a basket full of treats." Copying my tone, Ruby responded, "Oh, really? How kind and respectful of them. Were you just about to inform us of this kind and amazing present?" "Of course. I thought this treat would go perfectly with our breakfast." Walking up to me, Ruby examined the gift basket before grabbing it from my arms. Looking at the gift basket, now her hands, I whispered. You know you're an asshole, right? Are you sure? It sounds like you're projecting. To make things even worse, at that moment, both Zach and Irene walked out of the hotel, seeing us and Alya near the bus. Getting on her tippy toes, Ruby whispered directly into my ears. Don't worry, we'll give you the candy you deserve. Just say none. After the gift basket tragedy, I re-entered the bus, brushed past Alya, and sat back down in my section. Who even cares about some stupid treats? I'm rich now, I can get them anytime I want. The bus trip back went relatively well. Both Zach and Irene were exhausted from yesterday's treatments, so they didn't talk. And every time Ruby tried to make conversation, I glared at her with the utmost contempt. Drinking water, which was the only thing I could have with my taste buds burned to crisp, I stared out the window and finally saw the familiar city of the academy. Crossing the bridge, I picked up my phone and texted Raven. Ren, I'll be coming by today. Raven, oh, so now, you decide to warn me? What changed? Ren, don't worry about it. Raven, you say that knowing damn well, that just makes me worry more. Ren? Like, what do you want me to do about it? Raven, you're just going to say no to whatever I suggest, aren't you? Ren, of course not. A good boss always listens to their employees. Raven, be more specific. Don't just say vague things and expect M-. Ren, no can do. It's a good thing you're a co-owner and not an employee. Putting down my phone, I exited the bus behind Ruby and immediately headed to the academy gate to exit. After taking a train to the outskirts of town and entering the seemingly abandoned warehouse that we called our headquarters, I saw Raven sitting down, working on drawing more circles. You're not good at hiding it all, are you? Whatever do you mean, boss? As someone who had to fake doing schoolwork for my parents, I knew exactly what to look for, and with my enhanced eyesight finding the clues was just easier. You started working as soon as I texted you, didn't you? No. Your pencil has barely been touched, and there are only 3 papers beside you. I'm a slow writer. Recalling how I had made similar excuses in the past, I gave Raven a break and headed to the back of the room where the painting was hung on the wall. What the hell are you doing now, boss? Wasting no time, I jumped into the painting, ignoring Raven's screaming behind me. I felt my surroundings distort before stabilizing to reveal the area of my previous fight. Using my eyesight, I examined the entire room before finding some faint scrape marks on the floor. Following the scrape marks, I saw the test subject I had left behind in the fight lying face down on the floor. His horns were almost out of color, only a faint red was visible. Observing his body, I was somewhat disheartened to realize that corruption of the night had no effect on him as, besides the wound applied by daggers, there was no other damage done to him. Well, then I guess that begs the question, what do I do with him? I could just kill him, but Raven has been complaining about having too much work recently. This Jinn was persistent enough to live this long, so maybe he was a harder worker than Raven. Walking to the barely conscious Jinn, I yanked him upwards by his horns and stared him in the face. Well, you have 2 options now. Either die or work for me. At this point, if Raven had those 2 options, I think he would have chosen to die. Unable to speak due to lack of water, the Jinn simply stared at me with a pained expression. Do you want to live? Immediately, the Jinn mustered up all his strength and nodded his head until I finally gestured to him that I understood. Using my mana, I created a mana contract with the same terms as Raven's, except there was no time limit, and he didn't get any percentage of the company. Or, in other words, he was my servant, that didn't get paid. Mustering up his mana, the Jinn released a blood-red form of mana towards the contract, causing it to shine a bright purple instead of white before disappearing into the air. Putting the Jinn on my shoulders so that his horns didn't poke at me, I headed to the exit of the subspace before jumping into the painting once again. Right in front of the painting stood a bewildered Raven examining it. Then, his expression soured as he noticed me, and our new guest. Without giving any time for Raven to speak or even react, I said, "Meet your new assistant." Leading the Jinn to the kitchen, I immediately gave him water and food. Usually, you're not supposed to eat this much after not eating for a while, But he was a djinn, so it didn't affect him. As the djinn loudly gulped down the water and food, Raven hesitantly walked toward the kitchen before quietly whispering in my ear. But he's a djinn. So? Aren't you evil too? You've been scamming people in the black market for ages without any regrets. How are you different from him? The horns, maybe that's how we're different? How is scamming even comparable to killing, boss? Patting Raven on the shoulder, I responded. You'll get over it. It wasn't a lie. As the boss of the black market in the original timeline, Raven frequently got his hands dirty. Seeing the djinn having regained enough energy to at least speak, I asked. So, introduce yourself. Showing no hesitancy or surprise at his current situation, the djinn responded in between taking massive sips of water. I am Zeng. I don't really have any hobbies, but I do enjoy swordsmanship. Alright Raven, your turn. I'm Raven, and I'm a co-owner of a business with Ren over there. I'm Ren, and I enjoy swimming or diving. Employing the mana contract's power of the djinn having to listen to my commands, I said. Alright, listen. You're in Raven's hands. He'll show you the ropes and teach you some things. Listen to him. Why do I even try? Leaving the sullen Raven and Zeng, who were still gulping down food, I waved goodbye and headed back to the academy. While I did want to stay in the warehouse, security in the academy would be getting tighter due to the incidents, so even with my fake club card, re-entering the academy after 8 would be difficult. Nodding my head to the security guards, I headed inside the academy and towards my dorm building, but to my surprise, there was someone familiar waiting for me outside the dorm. In front of my dorm building stood Ruby, with the gigantic gift basket from earlier. Seeing me, Ruby ran up to me with a grin and said, "Don't worry, I'm shameless too." She had hidden the gift basket from Zach and Irene. Bowing my head, I said, "You're my savior." I had almost forgotten that she was also a villain. Why would she share the gift basket with the others? Well, let's go have a feast. A/N, would appreciate you guys drop a review. If we get enough, I'll drop an extra chap TMR as well. Following Ruby's lead, I headed into the forest right outside the dorm building. Confused as to why we were going so deep into the forest when there were almost no students out, I asked. Where are we going? You'll see. Is it really that hard to answer a question? Do you have no patience? Sighing, I tried to use my eyes to peer through the darkness and see the end of the path, only to realize that we weren't actually taking a path. We're not lost, are we? Smirking, Ruby didn't answer my question but instead fastened her pace, taking seemingly random turns every 20 steps. Realizing that the ground below me was actually tilting uphill instead of being flat, I looked up and realized that she was leading me up one of the tallest hills in the forest. Reaching the peak of the hill, Ruby abruptly sat down before immediately opening the gift basket, letting all the sweets spill out. Taking a seat across from her, I grabbed one of the orange-looking beverages that resembled Fanta from Earth and admired the view of the forest. The sound of birds chirping while flying through the sky, the green vines stretching all the way from the top of the tree to the bottom, and the moonlight shining down on certain spots of the forest created a perfect balance of light and dark. Snapping me out of my thoughts, Ruby's voice spoke from my left. What are planning for the school festival? Yes, the school festival. Unlike the previous events, I was not required to do anything, as the primary reason this event was held was to introduce Ren's father to Liam, which Lily would have no qualms with. Featuring a variety of events, the school held the festival to prove to the world that Celestial Academy was the best, as the top students from other schools in the human realm would compete against ours. After this week's break, the competing students from the other academies would temporarily join our class, but besides a few disputes among students, there was nothing special about it. There were also the Jinn infiltrators who would sneak about, but they would do nothing besides try to recruit a couple of students. Well, with all the changes made to the plot, I can't be too sure about the future, so I wasn't planning to drop my guard completely, especially when one of the variables was sitting right next to me and eating. Responding to Ruby, I said, "Nothing much, what about you?" Since I wasn't among the school's top students, I was not required to participate in any of the festival's events, but Ruby, on the other hand, was forced to sign up for at least one event. While it sounds bad that the academy requires its top students to compete in an event, It was actually a good opportunity. All the influential people in the realm would attend, so if you did fairly well, you could possibly receive an offer. One such case is Liam, who wins multiple events, leading him to gain the recognition of Ren's father. I haven't decided on an event yet. Are you planning to go to the tryouts? If you were outside the top 10, there was still a possibility that could compete if you did well enough in the team tryouts, but the tryouts were insanely intense as the academy wanted to filter out the unworthy students. Vehemently shaking my head, I basked in the sweet beverage that somehow tasted exactly like Fanta before grabbing another candy, which resembled Kit Kats from my world. Wait. Looking at the entire gift basket, I noticed that every single treat in there resembled a snack from my own world, with there being root beer, Skittles, and even Starburst. Was this Lily's doing? Creating a candy company would be a decent way to make money. Feeling the sugar high from all the treats I had eaten, I stood up and aimlessly walked around the small clearing we were sitting in. Eating a candy that resembled a Hershey's chocolate bar, Ruby silently stared at the ocean through the gaps in the trees. If I had to say, the main reason why Ruby and I got along so well is that we both had secrets that we refused to share with anyone else in the world. So, silent times like this were common, as neither of us wanted to talk too much, inadvertently revealing our secrets. The other times we talked, our words were full of sarcasm and jokes, as neither of us wanted to be honest or real with each other. That's why I didn't spend too much time around Ruby, as getting too close to her would cause me to drop my guard and be less cautious when speaking. In all honesty, I think that we both knew that this relationship was a ticking time bomb, as a relationship built on lies, deceit, and fake lives would never last for long. However, the time before the bomb exploded would be fun, at least. Before the training camp, I had forced myself to believe that all the relationships I was making were fake and would end whenever I returned to Earth, so I really didn't care too much about what happened. Now that I had a different perspective, I could more clearly examine my relationships with people around me and realize that basically every relationship I had contained some kind of problem. Han and Jean only hung out with me because they knew the original Ren and my relationship with Ruby could end at any time. Raven was only there because I had the power of the mana contract over him, and in the first place, I only met him because of my knowledge from the book. Everyone else in the world hated or had no opinion of me. I had spent maybe 2 months in this world, but besides my power, I had nothing at all to show for it. Ignoring this problem had been so much easier when I had been determined to get back to Earth, as these people would all disappear soon enough. So what was the point in having a good relationship with them? With the doubts about my return to Earth creeping in, I guess I had started to see the people around me as more than book characters, actual human beings with souls. Ending the silence, I waved my hands and said, "Well, I'll see you later then, thanks for the treat." Standing up, Ruby grabbed the remainder of the gift basket while I departed from the clearing and made my way back to my dorm building. On the way back, I saw a crowd of students gathering at the entrance, which was weird for this time. Curious, I made my way to the back of the crowd before using my eyes to peer through the gaps and see what everyone was so interested in. Midterm grades. #1. Liam. #2. Kevin. #3. Ollie. #4. Lily. #9. Irene. #10. Scarlet. #199. Rin. Well, good enough, I guess. The next week of break passed slowly. Realizing that all relationships were meaningless or built on lies, I was less inclined to hang out with the people around me, leading me to seclude myself. It's ironic that when I started to recognize that the people around me were actually people with souls, I hung out with them less than when I saw them as book characters. Ignoring the text messages on my phone, I dedicated all of my time to training, as that was the only thing that brought me some solace and distracted me from everything. That training allowed me to take the next step in mastering the Eclipse Blade, as I realized that I hadn't yet mastered the third movement. The third movement allowed me to create a shadow cage and, as I later learned, to manipulate my corruption of the night as a whole. Combining corruption of the night with the mana in my body, I could create actual physical objects like daggers, swords, and even a bow. I didn't yet have enough corruption of the night to create a bow and an arrow simultaneously, though, so that was useless for now. The quality of the daggers I created with corruption of the night far surpassed that of my normal daggers. However, Creating them would require a lot of mana and use a lot of corruption. That also led me to the realization that, just as I could gain corruption, it could also be lost when I manifested items or shadow cages when using it. I was glad to realize that elemental slashes didn't make me lose corruption of the night, though. Finishing up my fight with an AI bot, I slumped down against the wall and checked my stats menu. Menu ====. User, Ren Montclair. Class, Proficient Assassin, Level 3, 2%. Moderate Dagger Mastery, 7%. Arts, Eclipse Blade, 3/5. Rating, D. Dream not yet completed. Strength, E+. Agility, D+. Stamina, E+. Magic Power, D+. Luck. Conditional. Intelligence, E. Charm, D+. Crits. Passive, Dragon's Will, 1/. Dragon Eyes, your eyesight is enhanced. Skills. Not requiring any mana usage, the skill allows the user to move 10 meters from their current location in any direction with a cooldown period of 7 seconds. The skill does not instantly move the user but temporarily increases the user's speed until they move 10 meters. That's Dragon's Will, 1/. Was really starting to piss me off, but what could I do about it? Go ask an extinct creature, a dragon, how to advance. I was by no means in a hurry to complete my next dream due to my memories of the last one, so I had also put that on hold. With my death on the line in these dreams, I decided to advance my power a bit more before attempting that. Checking the calendar, I realized that classes would be starting tomorrow, and the festival was less than a week away. Sighing, I left my training hall and headed back to my dorm room to sleep. I knew that secluding myself forever would be impossible and stupid, but wasn't that a normal reaction for someone suddenly transferred to another world? What was the next step for me? Was I still being hell-bent on going back to Earth, or had that obsession decreased a bit? Did I want to build new relationships and advance my current ones, or just give up? There was only one question I could confidently answer. Do I want to continue maintaining the plot, or should I just let Lily do what she wants? I wanted to maintain the plot and keep the world from being destroyed. Lying down on my bed, the thought suddenly came to me. Is this what people call a midlife crisis? No, I'm too young for that, aren't I? Waking up the next morning, I finally decided to check my smartwatch messages for the first time in a week. Unread, 99 plus. 99 plus unread. Han, 30 unread. Raven, 7 unread. Ruby, 4 unread. Putting on the academy blazer, I put down my smartwatch without checking any of the messages and headed off to class. With most students starting tryouts for the festival team tomorrow, schoolwork should be minimal, so I didn't even bother doing the homework assigned. With my ability to manifest corrupted daggers at any time now, I didn't bother bringing my daggers everywhere, so I didn't have to worry about wearing heavy clothing like a sweatshirt to hide them. Just in time for summer. Looking at the sun, which was shining especially bright today, I decided to put aside all my problematic and conflicting thoughts for now. Sooner or later, I'd have to make a decision, but procrastinating was my specialty. Heading inside the building of my classes, I put inside my earbuds, which I had been using more and more recently, before heading up the stairs. Looking downwards at the reflection of the shiny metal stairs, I saw a figure right in front of me, so stepping to the right, I continued ascending the stairs. However, the figure blocking me also stepped to the right. Finally, looking upwards, I saw Astrid standing in front of me with a disgruntled expression and a clipboard in her hand. Not bothering to take out my wired earbuds, I irritatedly asked, "What? Have you thought about my offer to join the student council?" My answer stays the same. "That's fine, but I just wanted to let you know that I have another candidate who's interested in joining. If you don't accept, I'll be forced to allow them in." Letting out another sigh, I recalled that Lily would be trying to prevent Irene's transformation into a villain, and the first step to do that was to get Irene on the student council. Honestly, why did Irene have to be a villain? I justified my attempts to continue to make her a villain by assuming that if she didn't become a villain, a more powerful existence would replace her and make my life harder, but did I even know that would happen? Well, I'm too far in to give up now, aren't I? Sometimes, you just have to go with gut instinct, even if it's based on pure speculation. Anyway, it wasn't like this was my final choice. I could leave the council at any time and get Irene on it. Alright, I'll join, but don't expect anything. Anyway, wouldn't the student council be worse off if they had me? I mean, when found schools out the one and only Ren is on the student council, countless rumors like bribery and harassment will rise. I mean, it wasn't like I was going to contribute to the student council or anything either. Like, even Astrid should know that there was no way in hell I was doing any paperwork for the council. To be honest, I was just going to be a council member in the name. There was no way you'd catch me showing up to meetings or wasting my time doing work for this shitty school that somehow has gin attacks every month. Well, I guess this is Astrid's way of giving back to me because I saved her life. Surprisingly, this relationship was not formed on the logic of the book or the previous Ren. Walking past Astrid, who was writing something down on her clipboard, I entered our nearly empty classroom as class started in over 20 minutes. Grabbing a Starburst that I had taken from the gift basket, I savored the sweet taste of it before pulling out my smartwatch and scrolling. Before the training camp, I had been basically forced by Han and Jean to install the popular social media app, Nexu. Zack/followers, 1045/following, 102. Just got back from training camp, smiley face, attachment. Suppressing the urge to comment something on Zack's post, I moved to Irene's profile. Irene/followers, 50,932/following, 23. A lot has happened. Attachment. For Irene, the attachment was a picture of the half-broken-down cruise ship taken from the port, but seriously, did she have to make her post so edgy? All of the comments were something like, OMG, what happened? And are you okay? And call me now, and this is your father, please Sidash. Putting down my smartwatch and taking out my earbuds, I realized that the classroom was already almost full. Jean and Han were the only ones who were not here yet. Seeing them walk into the room as the bell rang, I didn't feel anxious or awkward about having to talk to them despite having ghosted them for a week. I just felt normal. After Han and Jean, the teacher walked in and stood at the podium before writing exchange students on the blackboard. From today until the end of the festival, exchange students from the other best academies in the human realm will be taking classes with you. As you guys are Celestial Academy students, I don't think I need to remind you, but just in case, do not be disrespectful or rude towards our visitors. Treat them as if they are normal students at Celestial Academy, just me and you. Is that understood? Nodding at Professor Zia's words, I saw Han and Jean sitting beside me, staring at the blackboard in confusion. After passing midterms, those two had partied and celebrated all week, so they probably had no idea about the upcoming Celestial Academy festival. Opening the sliding door, 6 students, 2 from each academy, entered our class and stood next to the professor. You all can get to know them at a later time. The class will begin now. Nodding at the professor's words, the 2 students from Eldertide Academy, the second-ranked academy, confidently walked towards the seats with smug expressions before sitting in the row in front of the main cast. Those 2 would be the main culprits of the disputes between schools. The other 4 students from the 3rd and 4th-ranked academies, Mystic Vale Institute and Drake Haven Academy, sat in the first row, right in front of the students from Eldertide, with expressions varying from concerned to happy. Recently, Professor Zia had given more and more detentions to Jean and Han for talking in class, so the 2 stayed silent while occasionally glancing at me. Hiding the wire of my earbud under my blazer, I put in one earbud and zoned out while staring out the window, where the cherry blossom trees were now light green. Unlike Earth, there were no climate change or environmental issues, so nature was beautiful almost everywhere, and the colors of everything were so vibrant. Feeling a tap on my shoulders, I saw almost the entire class, alongside Professor Zia, staring at me. I just had to be called on right now, didn't I? Well, I guess it is a third-rate villain's job to appear as stupid and shameless to everyone. Turning down the volume of my earbuds, I immediately heard Professor Zia speak. Ren, once again, answer the question on the board. Or were you not paying attention to my lesson? Scanning the whiteboard and reading the question, I was surprised to see that I had actually read a similar question and answer in my mind. But alas, I had to stay true to my role. Well, at this point, it wasn't but I honestly preferred staying true to being a third-rate villain, as it more suited my personality than anything else. Shrugging my shoulders, I responded, I don't know. Of course, most of the class burst into laughter at my answer, but they were all book characters, weren't they? Weren't they actual people like me too? Well, no matter the case, I ignored it and looked on as Professor Zia sighed before calling on another student. Zoning out until the bell rang, I was the first to get up and leave the classroom, as I had no intention of dealing with the dispute that would take place with the new exchange students. However, one of the exchange students from Eldertide Academy was blocking my exit to the classroom as they glanced at me. And where are you going? To get lunch? Is there a problem? No, I'm just surprised that this school is considered number one when people like you can attend. Isn't this a battle between third-rate villains? Both of us were created simply so that the protagonist would be more powerful or have a greater reputation. But then, is there a hierarchy among third-rate villains? Or why is he so damn annoying? We're the same kind, aren't we? So, can you move? And why should I listen to you? You're blocking the door. What the hell are you talking about? Are you brain dead? Seriously, you calling him Dash? Realizing that he had no intention of moving, I secretly conjured a pitch-black cover around my hand before grabbing his shirt and throwing him out of the way with the extra strength provided by my corruption. Bang. Was this a rash action simply because I was more annoyed than usual today? Yes, but it was friendly fire since we were both third-rates, so it didn't count. Watching him fly like an arrow and land on a couple of empty desks with his back downwards, causing the chairs to topple down, I exited the classroom without waiting for anyone's reaction. However, right outside the classroom doors was Astrid, waiting with her clipboard in her hand. Seeing my exit, she immediately gestured at me with her hand, so I reluctantly followed. A third-rate villain like me couldn't hope to take on a main cast member like Astrid. Trailing slightly behind her, I once again asked in an annoyed tone, Is there something you need? I have to show you the student council room, give you your badge for the upcoming festival, and explain your duties. Does she seriously believe that I'll work? After thinking about it for a moment, I realized that the student council badge would actually be nice for the event as I would get access to all the VIP areas, so I continued to follow her. When I entered the empty student council room, I first noticed that it was as big as my classroom despite being for a maximum of 10 students. Handing me a lanyard with my face and student council member on it, Astrid started explaining how to sign various documents and which teachers to talk to, but I just zoned out once again. Are you listening? What do you think? You're not. Realizing conversation with me was futile, she handed me a guidebook before heading to her desk in the center of the room, where the teacher's podium normally sat. Putting the guidebook in my backpack, I considered reading it as it would only take me an hour with my eyes before Astrid spoke once again. Alright, well, that's it. Welcome to the student council. Can I leave now, then? You know most people would be jumping up and down after being personally invited to the student council. That's nice, thank you for sharing. Sighing, most likely contemplating her decision to invite me, Astrid got up from her desk and gestured for me to follow her once again. One more thing,